Commissioners meeting, July 10th. All three commissioners are present. Public comments, don't see any, let's move on. Elected officials and department head updates. Start with Eli.
I have, there's two items that, and I'm sure, and I want to speak about one probably later. Or,
Yeah, you're on the agenda.
okay,
Yeah.
but, I'm passing around the Stoddard, contract. I need a signature from the commissioners. That's kind of been, they extended the contract and they did vote to go with us.
Mhm.
They did, vote to go with us. So it's similar to all the other contracts we have with the Richmond, Gilson and Sullivan. So it's kind of pretty much what we have in place. So we're,
Does that mean you're going to have to bring somebody on to fill those hours?
we're in the process of actually hiring two new deputies, because unfortunately, we had to, let go one who did not make the academy.
Mhm.
So,
Didn't what?
make the academy.
Make the chat.
When are they starting to start?
Oh, we're making a presence already in Stoddard, as time permits.
First time. Yeah. So, all right, so we'll get to the second topic in a bit. All right. I'm gonna move on to Cheryl. Do you have anything for us right at this moment?
Sound is going in and out. They can't hear us totally.
But
I
Cheryl's
can-
there.
So I can hear Chris and Eli. Jack, can you just say something?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, that's better. When you were having a conversation earlier, I was like, it was in and out, so hopefully. I think the only thing I have to mention is,
The owl. Yeah. But the
oh,
owl.
it's like a drunken owl.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
All right, speak then.
So the only thing I just wanted to let you all know, and you'll end up seeing it in your cash receipts, is that we received our annual distribution from the SG abandoned property. This year it was $18,000, which is a little lower, but it's one of those hit or miss. For those that don't understand what this abandoned property is that essentially every agent throughout the state is required to submit to the Abandoned Property Division of New Hampshire annually, any uncashed employee paychecks that have not been cashed, in over a year, and any vendor payments that have never been cashed that are over 5 years. For us, we do that on behalf, of course, our general fund, the inmate fund, the resident fund, any funds that we hold on to, that we distribute checks if things have not been cashed, and we attempt to try to get people to do it as well. We have to send it to abandoned property, but everyone has to do it. Banks have to do it, businesses. And so in turn, what happens is, the state then sends back to the county on record money, like about 4 years thereafter, that has still gone unclaimed. It doesn't mean that an individual can't 15 years down the road go and claim it. I don't know if anybody's ever gone on to the abandoned property division and done a search for their name to see if you've got some money out there unclaimed, but it is, you should try it. But essentially it comes back to the county treasurer and or to the county, and this year we got $18,219.53.
So we actually can spend it, or we just add it to our fund balance because in perpetuity, somebody might actually have some rights to it.
So basically, first of all, yes, it goes to our fund balance, but we also, in a sense, budget for it because we post it to miscellaneous income. And we always budget a certain amount of miscellaneous income each year. And the majority of it's because of this, knowing that we usually get a pretty substantial distribution, but future years gets offset. Future year distributions from the state, get offset by anything that may have come forward that they already gave us. So this 18,219 is kind of a balancing act of new money and money that they may have had to distribute that they already gave us in previous years.
So this is 2020.
Are we able to identify whose money this is?
No,
Or,
No,
no,
That happened to me once. I found a
I-
paycheck that I hadn't cashed.
yeah,
So I always, you get what you need kind
yeah,
of moments in it.
yeah,
yeah. I actually have a little tiny bit of money out there and you have to ask for a form. But it's only like $7 and I keep, every time I get the form, I forget to send it in. But if you Google your name, you'll basically see if there's anything out there. And all it does is basically just gives you an indication if it's, I think,
Less
under
than
$100 or if it's over $100. And then you just request a form from the state and then they'll ask you for more identifying information to prove that you're you. And when that happens, they'll send you back money that has been presented.
yeah.
great,
All right, thank you, Cheryl. Anything else?
No, well, I guess one other thing, just so you're aware, and Chris may have could have brought it up. We've been presented, Eli's been presented with the Teamsters, their intent to bargain. So I'm gathering together some information
Dispatch
for
and deputies.
deputies. So that would mean I would expect that we'll be getting the Department of Corrections anytime soon as well.
No,
Oh, right.
no,
Yeah,
that's a year out.
yeah, you're right. Oh, good.
So-
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. So,
okay,
all right, gonna keep on moving on. Doug, do you have anything for this portion of it?
So if you want the sequential intercept and pre-trial later, I'll just do two brief updates. As you can see, the paving project is underway, but FYI, it's in a delay of several weeks as the coordination between the subcontractor doing the concrete work and Allstate doing the paving, the subcontractors delayed until early August, so we'll be finishing it up probably the first week of August.
So you should cover.
Did you, yeah, that's still available.
Not gonna do
They'll,
that.
they'll keep it, at least through the duration of the project.
That's been one of your things, right?
But we don't want it because we do want
Okay.
traffic to come close enough that we can read right license plates. Actual need for the external cameras. And let's see. Oh, just that today and tomorrow is the follow-up survey from the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. And they're here. And we are in much better shape. We're not sure if we'll pass, but I'll report out on that at a future meeting.
that's in terms of receiving special certification.
Accreditation,
Yeah, but
yeah.
it's not like the services aren't good, it's just this is a level of accreditation.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Have you had any recent COVID cases?
No,
Are you testing much?
still testing at the point, any symptomatic.
Okay.
And testing on day 6 before release from reception and diagnostic unit out to general population.
All right,
I'll come back in when
Yeah.
you're ready. and be-
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, Suzanne, you've got your stuff. Are you gonna address that when you were talking about, when I do your agenda item? Okay, so I've got, Kim, do you have anything?
I do not. All is well in the world of HR.
You shouldn't have said that. All right. All right, scheduled items then. Master agenda item number 1189, cost allocation plan, indirect cost rate policy, and fringe benefit rate policy. Suzanne Benz leads the report. Action expected, vote to approve and execute a cost allocation plan and corresponding indirect cost rate policy and fringe benefit rate policy for the county to meet the requirements of the Uniform Grant Guidance. Suzanne.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for your attention and time on a boring topic. I hope to make it interesting. We have here 3 policies to be executed. Davis has the actual forms. They all go together. The cost allocation plan and the indirect cost rate policy has been signed annually. New this year is a fringe benefit cost rate. What these are together, the cost allocation plan essentially supports the calculations of both the indirect cost rate policy and the benefit cost rate. It is a requirement for grants that if you want to use an indirect cost rate policy and or a fringe benefit rate policy, that you have that supported by a cost allocation plan. What that is, in essence, it says that all of the direct costs were isolated from indirect costs. Certain costs that the government thinks should be excluded have been excluded. And then it's a simple calculation of indirect divided by direct costs, and that results in your indirect cost rate. Ours resulted in about 11% was our indirect cost rate. It shows on the bottom of the cost allocation plan. It's exactly 11.84% when you divide all allowable indirect costs by all allowable direct costs. What you're signing off on is that this was done according to the rules, that it's accurate, and that all the costs included are necessary, reasonable, and allocable. To date, I have been doing, because in part, the indirect cost rate policy for local governments requires that we have one, but it almost doesn't matter because we still use what's called the de minimis indirect cost rate. And what that is the government saying you can use our percent rate and multiply it by a modified direct cost rate. So this year, they've allowed us to increase that from 10% to 15%. And within the modified costs that are excluded, namely that's participant support costs, capital expenditures, large purchases of equipment, rental costs, and contracts now over 50,000. It used to be 25,000. For us, it will work out to roughly the same thing, about 11 to 12%, because it's not on all costs, it's on modified costs. Before I tell you about the benefit cost rate, do you have any questions so far?
I do, real quickly, when we do if we need to have motions for all of these, do you need one for the cost allocation plan as it is a function, not a policy, or do you need it for the 2 policies or all of the above?
All of the above.
Okay.
We can just do one for all of them if you would like.
Okay.
Okay. Unless you would like to separate them.
Not
you
at
might
all.
Want to once you hear about the benefit one. Any other questions before I tell you about the benefit cost rate policy, which is brand new this year?
Nope, keep going.
Okay. So the benefit cost rate policy is very similar to the indirect cost rate policy. It is also calculated through the cost allocation plan, but the main difference is that it's the cost allocation plan now actually serves a real function as opposed to checking a box for the benefit of Uncle Sam. The cost allocation plan I actually use to calculate the rate in which we will actually use. What I did there was take all of the salary wage accounts and isolate them, and all of the benefit accounts of benefits divided by salary. And that equals 46.22%. What this means is you can say that Cheshire County spends about 46.22% of what it spends on salary. It spends that on all benefits. So this captures the standard FICA, unemployment, workers' compensation, but it also captures health insurance, dental insurance, the long and short-term disability insurance, etc. It captures all of it, including tuition reimbursement and the alternative health plan as well, assuming I captured all of the accounts. I had Cheryl take a look over it, and we believe that we did represent all the salary and benefit accounts accurately from both the Cheshire County government and Maplewood, and also, so all three combined, the EMS department as well. So what we're gonna do going forward, effective July 1, is use this rate as a multiplier whenever we're directly charging salary and wages to any given grant or contract. Right now, that only applies to connected families. And so Cheryl and I have discussed that this will be effective July 1 this year, but in future years, when we know the rate, that won't come out until May or June. We will be making a retroactive adjustment to contracts and grants that use this, that will go back to January 1. So the current rate that we use in 2024 will be the one that was calculated based off of 2023 expenditures. Up to date, the way that we've been charging benefits to grants has been a manual calculation by individual employee. What this does is cause extraordinary amounts of time and vast spreadsheets, which are prone to error, in order to calculate this on an individual basis. It has numerous flaws, which I can elaborate on if you would like, but the ultimate result by using this rate is that it will produce greater efficiency and will likely also allow us to capture more of the benefit costs on an average basis across all employees instead of on the individual level. And this will also allow us to capture more benefit costs when we are using a match on a grant as opposed to the actual grant charges. So 46.22% will be used from July 1st going forward, and then I will bring this forward annually, and we will have a new rate each year adjusted back to January 1. So that's what a fringe benefit cost rate is. Do you have any questions?
So does that actually increase either the opportunity for grants or more admin costs? How do we see this? And if it's 42 point something now, what was it before?
I have calculated this going back the last couple of years, and I would need a moment to pull up my old spreadsheets, but it has been roughly plus or minus a few percent points of 46. It has ranged above 40 and gone up to about as high as 48.
Okay,
and I've done this for the last 2-3 years just to see.
That's awesome. Okay.
What this will not do is qualify us for more grants. That's not what it will do. It will likely allow us greater efficiency. Right now, the amount of time that Jen, and formerly it was Delana, and prior to that it was me, has spent countless hours just simply calculating the benefit amount. So this will improve that efficiency. And when we're manually calculating it, it becomes exceptionally difficult when someone's time is spread over different grants. We have some employees that work on 2 or even 3 grants, and we're not able to properly divide that in a manual way. Plus, we can't quite get all of the benefits for everyone, because the way that we apply to a grant is on a biweekly basis, according to check requests, according to the payroll, but many benefits are not applied that way. Example, health and dental is done monthly. So it gets really weird when we try to apply health and dental, especially when someone's time is split. So this is in essence, will create greater efficiency. I'm not sure until we do it for a while, and there may not be a way to actually see, unless we compare to old grants, if we end up having more or less charged to a grant. But the theory is that it should even out, be plus or minus a nominal amount when we capture the average rate across all employees.
Got it. Okay. So I would ask for a motion to execute a cost allocation plan, corresponding indirect cost rate policy, and a fringe benefit rate policy for the county to meet the requirements of the uniform grant guidance.
So move, second.
Okay, any questions? Commissioner Wasback.
Okay.
Commissioner England,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark. Okay. Second part of that is that, I've been, we started a process around the personnel handbook. Kim started it. She's been working closely with Suzanne. Suzanne has some real skill set around policy, so she helped, create some policies around our personnel handbook that needs to be updated. We are going through it. Suzanne has given it back to us. Cheryl, Kim and I have been meeting, met for about 3 hours yesterday, and we'll meet again, over the next coming month. And, get that to you guys. And what we'll do is we'll hand it, what it will be all of the above, and we'll give it to you a week ahead of time. You'll have it, we'll talk about it, you'll have it for another week, and then we'll have it for adoption the following week. If you guys are comfortable, and we'll make any changes, you look at something long enough, you're missing something that's staring right at you. We know that, and we also know that this is a working document. The second we put it out there, somebody will find something that we just completely, all of us looked at, so, that just will happen. And then second after that is, we're going to start looking at our policies across the board, and really, Cheryl, myself, Suzanne, and others where it's appropriate, where it affects their departments, we've been pulled in to see if we have to, really start developing a policy base. Because there's a lot of policies out there when it comes to grants or other areas where, we're talking about procurement, but how does that play into our overall policy for the county? And it ties and how does it tie into the statute at the state of New Hampshire, and how does it tie in nationally? So we're just gonna start having this conversation, and we're gonna take it a small step at a time. I'm gonna probably take the school board approach, where you take 5 policies, we'll go one at a time. When we get done with those 5, when we get done with one, we'll bring it to you, we'll explain it to you, you have it for a week, you can come back, ask some more questions about it. If there is none, then we'll bring this policy forward. And it's just a process we're gonna look at, and it may be that we have 10 things we have to look at, maybe 50, maybe 2, we'll see, but we're just gonna start reviewing all that too.
So apropos Terry's comment, are we gonna get a list of the changes and then a red line version?
That's what we're hoping to do with what we're doing here as best we can. Shane, Kim's going like this, so. Okay. Suzanne, anything to add to that? Cheryl, anything? Kim, anything I missed?
Yes, I have a thing to add to that. So once we are through the employment manual, the employment handbook, I would like to bring forward the grants policy and procedure manual for a formal adoption, or at least to formally make you aware that it is there. To date, I have simply updated this, and really it's used and shared between me and Jen. But the way that it's supposed to be applied according to the federal grant rules is that it is shared broadly through your organization. There are several policies within that I have entered into this manual in order for us to check a box. And that they, however, apply to the entire organization. There are several others that apply to just finance and grants. And there are a few that also are in there that apply, that should be a finance or an accounting policy, but we don't have it for finance or accounting, and we need it in order to stay qualified for grants. The time, I think, is waning where we can have these policies for the sake of having a policy, so that we can tell a grant or a grantor that we have the policy and see here attached. And I'm just copying and pasting it from a manual that only I have ever seen. And what I would like to do is make it more official by presenting it to you and asking for a formal adoption of it. Maybe you don't have to adopt the entire manual. Maybe it's a small subset that says we adopt the manual, see attached. But to get us a little greater into compliance and to actually use these policies. I'm hopeful that when you view it, that might make more sense. So for the moment, this is a spoiler alert.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that sounds all right. I mean, as to Maplewood, from a regulatory review, we have to sign off annually, I believe, on certain policies and procedures.
Correct.
But generally, intra-departmental policies aren't something we
Right,
review or approve unless required by regulation.
yeah. So these are the things that's the conversation we want to have.
Right.
Where do they overlap? What do we need to look at?
I mean, there's no harm.
Yeah,
Especially for the ones that should apply to all of the departments. To have it adopted by you so that it does actually apply to all of the departments. For example, this would be a breach of personally identifiable information policy where you're supposed to hold that information private, and if it does get leaked, that you follow this procedure to address that. A language assistance plan and policy where if somebody encounters somebody who does not speak English, that they have this policy that they follow. A conflict of interest policy, the means in which we execute contracts, our entire procurement policy, a whistleblowing policy, these things that even for the departments that don't have grants, and even for the programs not supported by grants, according to the grant rules, to be qualified at all for grants, these are some prerequisites that the county is supposed to have. For technical purposes, we do, because I wrote them, but it's not shared and nobody knows about them. And if we end up having somebody that is unaware and then something happens and then there's a complaint, all of that could be avoided by simply sharing these policies in advance. And so I'm asking for a venue in which that can occur.
Well, that makes sense, because some of those policies you've listed, we actually do have. But of course, then the issue is they could be different than what you draft.
or they need to be updated, whatever it may be that we're gonna take a look at. So that's the spoiler alert that she's talking about. We're gonna just start thoughtfully and pragmatically working through this process.
Right.
How big is?
Yeah, some of them are out of date. We're unaware. We don't have a parking lot. No one knows where they are.
This is a question.
Just said.
500 different policies.
Yeah,
500.
yeah. This is,
Could be.
Well, we're
We-
gonna buy
we-
a skid steer.
yeah, I'm just gonna, but it's problematic that there, it's here. We just want to take a look at where things are at and how they all tie together. That's all we're doing. We wanted to do this 4 or 5 years ago, and to be honest with you, commissioners at the time said, no, and go down that road, so.
I think
Yeah,
ideal
for
would
you.
be to have a centralized
Phrase.
location.
Yeah, so I appreciate that and I think that's something that we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna start heading down that road.
Right, you got 4 months.
Yep. There you go. So I'm gonna
Thank you
move
so
on to,
much.
yeah, I'm gonna move on to master agenda item number 1190, dispatch project update. Eli's here, action expect to receive informational as possible report on updates regarding the ongoing sheriff dispatch project. Eli.
So before I tackle that, I did forget something earlier.
Oh, no, that's not on the thing.
But one of my elected official, no, we are seeing an increase in 91A requests
Really?
for our office.
Really?
Just little things here and there. So I don't know whether we might want to reach out to see if any other departments are having the same issue, and it's so freaking technical and legally that sometimes I ask one attorney one thing and I ask another attorney another. We have different interpretations of what can and cannot be released, so I don't know whether we want to have somebody in retainer or hire somebody within the county that help us handle those 91A request complexities.
What are 91A?
Right to know request, people whether.
Is this global request or local request? Cause
What do you mean
sometimes,
global?
sometimes somebody.
No, these are like requests for work that we do, I want the information on Johnny Doe because of, okay, well, I'm not gonna go back and look and see, can we not, and sometimes we have to make a legal definition, as to, well, we don't believe that your request meets the invasion of privacy, and we're not gonna release it, but here comes an attorney with a 35-page memorandum, it's like, okay. So sometimes I get, so I'm
Well,
thinking whether we should.
Yeah.
We have 3 individuals we use for these situations, so.
Well, some of the statutory protections and so forth are a little different for law enforcement than
Yeah.
other sections.
Yeah.
And I know we're pretty comfortable with a lot of those things. We don't ever see the law enforcement.
Mhm.
But it might be a Primex question.
That's right.
Because obviously, at the end of the day, if there's any issues, defense suits or liability, you know. But they might be able to steer you to an attorney that's more focused on law enforcement requests.
Correct. One of our three uses is Mike Ricker from Primex. And he usually says this, you should think about it, from our perspective, you should think about this. I have this person we use that could look into this for you. And so that's one place that we usually go.
Subject matter.
We've used Adam Casada in the past for certain situations. We've also used Tom Clausen for certain situations.
So I don't know whether he's getting them or the county, others, the county attorney, but I've seen an increase, you know, I used to probably get 10 a year, I'm already about like 20 plus.
Really?
You know,
But
it's
it's
little stuff.
locally generated by people who, or nationally by.
You know, no, the most, I don't get like, you know. I wanted the calls and everything from the call you at my house. Well, I have to go through that, but, you know, I want the attorneys asking who are gonna be suing somebody, you know, I want all the records for this. Case while it's still under investigation, like, oh, is this attorney representing which family, because they don't tell you? I just want this, you know, and so it kind of, it gets a little tricky, I'm dealing with one right now where, you know, it's like. It's both. In the criminal investigation. But, you know, the statute, you know, there's, like I said, people say, well, the statute allows for. You to not release it because it's under investigation. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you cannot release it, that means you have to give them everything you can redacted.
Sure.
So you might give them 10 pages of a black highlight, you know, or.
Yes.
Redacting everything, but you can't just deny it. And that's, you know, that's one attorney telling me, you can't deny, you gotta give him something, whether it's redacted or one page or whatever. Other attorney says. Deny it, because it's one, well, I can't, you know, so it's different interpretations and the body camera, you know, when you can and cannot, so it's a little tricky. So I'm there with one right now, so I don't. Well, I just wanna see whether this increase that I'm seeing, it's being seen somewhere. So.
Yeah.
Or the county as a whole gets into.
I actually I knocked on wood when you said it, because we haven't, I mean, the last one I received was one asking about what our, asking for all of our, guidelines for, land management. And it's like, we don't do that level of stuff. You have to, so with an easy, it's not a consistent, so.
All right, I'm just kind of concerned about. So as to the dispatch project, we are pretty much moving away. Our hope is to have the majority of it all completed by fall. The leases that we were having some issues with are all been resolved. And as you know, I mentioned before that you know, there is a cost attached to that because of new owners of the sites, you know, handshake agreements are no longer any good, you know, now it's actual, you know, a lot of these sites are now owned by, you know, big companies, you know, where they have tower, that's all they do is just manage and own towers, so, the tower that Johnny put on his land now is owned by West South. So now they're looking to profit, so we found ourselves that, you know, that the cost to doing business will increase quite a bit. As if we contend with the dispatch center. We are having an issue with one site where we might have to find a different location because again, it was a handshake agreement with the property owner. Now the property's on an estate. The family doesn't like the idea of having it there and aesthetics and easements and liability, so we're trying to figure out whether we might be able to either get a lease through them with an easement to the property so that we can stay there. If the family feels, no, I don't like it, I don't know why my parents did this, we gotta go find another place, we're gonna have to find another place to go. So that's where we at, but that's the only one site that we are having some issues right now that we're hoping to resolve, hopefully on time so we can get this project complete. It's very good.
What's the average cost?
Right now, we average about 5,000 a year.
Oh.
We've been negotiating to $5,000 a year. We have one site that was gonna charge us 1,500 a month. And we're like, come on, we've been up there forever, you know, we went.
When we were paying you $1,500 a year.
What do we think about, talking to somebody about introducing legislation that limits public safety power rental fees in some way or shapes in some,
Yeah,
there's a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of them. Like I said, if,
that's,
You
yeah,
don't want to be held hostage
Mm.
to
Yeah.
corporate
right.
returns. Because they realize
yeah,
they can
they can do,
conceivably ask anything they want, and if you don't do it.
Give them a tax credit or something or something. I don't care what you do, come up with something.
so, yeah, so that's, you know, like I said,
Maybe
we,
something to talk to
Yeah,
Dan.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, we've been on some of these places for 25 since we opened, you know, 25 years ago plus.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was, sure, put a tower on my land, we don't care, you know, and,
Well,
or.
and we've had tower owners
Mhm.
who appreciated public safety.
Yep.
And were fine to do it with de minimis fees
Mhm.
or none.
And, you know, and then we also found that one site, the actual. The leaser, the original leaser of the site walked off on it. And left us there, and we realized, and when we opened the negotiations, said, well, hold on, you're behind on. You know, you gotta either. Cough up the funds to stay on it, or we're gonna charge you this much to make up. So it's like, you know, so that's kind of where we kind of went at, but so far, everything's been agreed, all those sites that were, the 3 ones that we were having issues getting going are all set, we signed, we're now in the phase of, you know, notice to proceed or and get going, so we're good with that. But there's just the one side that the family estate is kind of like pushing back a little bit, and we're hoping that we can make it look like a pine tree with a lot of bushes around it and and with the statics and make it that they will agree with it, but we're not sure. The other thing is, we're pretty much on track on the cost. We have made some adjustments on some of the, as we built the sites, we found that we don't need something, or we had to add something, so. They've been kind of balancing each other, also the civil, budget that we have has pretty much, stayed within the budget, and which is good, to allow us to, you know, make some changes, like, for example, we were gonna, at the hen sale, we were gonna put a propane tank and everything like that, and they came out and said, you can't do that because you're right next to a playground, blah, 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 so we end up going, unless you go on the ground, he said, so we end up back where originally were, up on, we're reinforced and kind of save us some money, because we didn't have to do that work. So, which is a good thing. And the other thing is, as you know, we have retained a prior director to help us kind of manage all this process. She's going to town meetings and select boards to get, you know, minute notes, authorizing and stuff like that. So she's been pretty busy getting us on track. But, and talking with Cheryl, you know, we might have to, modify the budget in August, because, the budget was limited to keeping her until the end of June. We are not there, so we're gonna have to keep her for hopefully for another 3 or 4 months until we can complete this. At least get the project complete. Once the project completes, then she can, ride off into the sunset. But I think we're gonna, I talked with Cheryl, and I think we can accommodate her, her salary, for, the rest of the year. until we complete this project, but I just want to bring that forward because, you know, the budget was the budget was signed with the understanding that she was gonna be completed by the end of June.
When are we gonna have the delegation meeting to?
So we have the second Monday of August is the executive committee meeting. The following Monday is the delegation meeting.
That should be the 12th and the
19th.
Does that sound right, Cheryl?
It would be 10 o'clock on the 12th, and it would be 7 o'clock on the 19th.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, because I had something different, but that's okay. So we're not now doing the 12th at 7 o'clock. We're doing the 19th at 7 o'clock. I'm fine with either, just had something.
I
different.
thought, I came back on the 5th. Remember, I came back on the 5th. So we said, we'll push it out to the following week for the executive committee.
Okay. So the
And then the
12th,
19th would be the delegation meeting.
Okay.
So,
so I mean, just to follow up with what Eli was just saying, I don't think we necessarily need to amend the budget for Arlene. I feel like the dispatch department, I think he's got some vacancies in the dispatch area. That budget's gone over before anyway, just because of the ebbs and flows of a lot of vacancies in the dispatch. And then when he brings people on, they're double training. So overtime goes over. I feel like I think the budget can sustain and may go over some. One line may go over, another might come under. But I just think we just need to speak to what happened and just let it do what it needs to. I don't think it will be anything major. Between his sheriff's budget and the dispatch budget, he will more than be able to sustain having to keep Arlene on for a bit longer.
Yeah.
Without having to do a budget amendment with the
I
executive.
think it's administratively, you're gonna be able to do what you need to do to cover the cost and move forward. That's
so we're getting pretty close to the time and we know what.
Yeah, next week on the 17th, you'll have a number, but we'll also, when you come back, we may have any additions because you'll have the Wednesday before that Monday too. So we've got time, but that's when we had talked about it prior. The week you were away, I did bring it up to the commissioners, what I was thinking about, because it's two levels, opiate and also pro share.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, I won't be here next week, but I'll have something formally put together for Chris to present, which will coincide with what he talked about, 2 weeks ago? Or
yes,
So were you looking, have you identified a time in the 12th? That you might have said that.
I think we said 10.
yeah.
The 19th would be in the evening.
7 p.m.
So I was actually,
At any point.
Yeah,
yes.
I know, but maybe some I did, I kind of figured it. Just tell me.
So we give an update on that. Get what I'm trying to say.
And
That's tell me.
so the 19th, I've had in my calendar forever, the NHAC Long-Term Care Summit in Portsmouth, which is on August 19th.
At 7 o'clock at night?
Well, I don't know, I haven't looked at a full agenda. But
It's bizarre because they didn't mention anything about it.
they've been sending out all the dates and notifications for a long time, maybe we should look at them.
Okay, we'll follow
Who's
up.
been
with it.
sending that out? DHHS?
NHA, New Hampshire Association of Counties,
I have it here, actually. It looks like it's,
Long-Term Care Summit in Portsmouth, it's been teed up for months. I guess we just need to think about
Yeah,
what that's gonna be and who should go.
starts in the morning.
okay,
I think that's all I see so far. 9 AM to 4 PM. And it's at the Marriott Portsmouth downtown.
okay. No, I appreciate that. We'll look into it. If we have to make some changes to it, we will.
Okay.
They're not in session, so we can, there can be other days than Mondays. Is what Dan has said to us, so,
Okay.
all right? Are you all set then? You're dying, aren't you?
No, I'm good. I'm gonna stick around for, Doug, because I should piggyback on him for what we're doing too.
Okay. All right, so then I'm gonna go to, the next, let me just get my thing back here. I'm gonna go on to the next master agenda item number 1191, Monadnock Economic Development Corporation impact and budget updates. Cody Morrison's here, you can introduce your guests. Expect to receive information as possible on the impact of Medic over the last year within the context of the upcoming budget cycle. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for letting us join you
Thanks for
today.
waiting.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about all of our grants policies, having heard Suzanne go over all that. I'm thinking like, oh no, what do we need to do? What do we need to improve?
You know,
And
just leave with work when you come to here.
and how much more of Suzanne's time can I take? But
Well, let's just say the policies and the procedures are. So,
copy and paste. But as you all know, Cody Morrison, Executive Director of MEDC. My guest here is Alexa Plegler. She is the mastermind behind our childcare program. You may know her as a former Executive Director of the Cheshire Children's Museum in Keene. But she'll be here to answer any questions about our childcare program that you may have heard about, and we'll discuss a little more. So the purpose of this visit today is to discuss our activities over the last fiscal year, as county support was essential to our operations as we continue to adopt a new business model and implement a new strategic plan that was put together throughout like 2020 to 2022. Last week marked my second anniversary on the job, which was a milestone for MEDC, which because that signifies really the implementation of that new strategic plan. And for context, just to give you all a picture of where we fit in within local economic development efforts, I kind of look at this ecosystem as a triangle. One corner of it is the chamber, or the Greater Monadnock Collaborative. They're the cheerleaders. They tell the story of the region throughout the world. Southwest Region Planning Commission works with communities, municipalities to help them with their land use and other policies that allow for buildings and businesses to thrive and for good stuff to happen. Whereas we are kind of the third tier of that triangle, which we focus on implementation. So we were originally created to help communities implement their master plans, for instance. So we are the ones that kind of roll up our sleeves and do the dirty work and do a lot of the behind the scenes work, whether it's deal structuring, negotiating. You all have seen it through the courthouse project several years ago. That's one example, but we're always negotiating 5 or 10 different business deals all at the same time, whether it be through housing, through childcare, through a retail store or an expansion or a manufacturing company, or anyone else that wants to do something prosperous for their business.
Let me just say that so impressed that childcare has become part of the solution to economic development. For so many years, that has been something that hasn't been, and it's sort of just been put aside. Everybody knew about it. Now, really glad that actually doing something about
It's been a social services issue. And a lot of I speak with many of my counterparts, whether it be at the state level, municipal level, or other regional development corporations. And childcare is just now starting to get on people's radar as something that they should look at. And whereas when businesses, when any employer, when all employers are telling us the same thing, we need people. We gotta address the root causes of what gets people to businesses. Workers need houses, workers need homes, and workers need sustainable quality childcare to support their growing families. And if we are not at the forefront of those issues, then we're not doing the job, in my opinion. And 20 years ago, these issues weren't as prevalent as they are today. Which our restructuring was really a good time as these issues were really exacerbated over the last couple of years through COVID. So, so we're excited, but the last fiscal year was productive for us. Probably when I spoke with you all last, or when I presented, I gave our last update in October, I think like October 23rd of last year. We had just got awarded some new programs and we're starting to structure them. Now we are in the implementation phase. So now we're at the fun part. And now we're at the scary part too. Now we're getting all the money out in the street. So over the last year, we had 1.4 million in new programs, childcare for environmental remediation, for housing. So our activities in total upgrade 57 new housing units, 35 new childcare slots. We helped over 40 businesses last year, and we leveraged over $16 million in public and private financing throughout projects. And you know, again, our goal for diversifying was to prioritize how we engage with communities differently. So we're not just so that I can call Michael Brandley or I can call Catherine Lynch, any of the town managers, and speak with them, help them with congressional directed spending requests or miscellaneous things that aren't necessarily tied to a new factory being built. But wanted to dive into specifics a little bit. One part that county support would not have happened without, we used ARPA funding that we received from the county to hire a new program manager back in November. So this position helps oversee our revolving loan fund programs and our business advising programs. So it's the position held by a Keene resident, Nancy DeVos, who was a former regional director for the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center. So they help companies. So this position, it helps companies with expansions from micro businesses to salons, all the way up to industrial manufacturers and large corporations. With initial county investment, from our ARPA funding, we are expecting the position to be self-sustaining, just through new business deals being done as a result of this position. We add capacity by the fall. So we actually have a loan that is going to be hopefully closing at the end of this week. With this position really did about 90% of the work, the grunt work to make happen, and we have a couple others hoping to close on later this summer. So next time I come speak with you, I'll be excited to be able to name specifics, but I don't dare for the sake of possibly jinxing myself. And again, we would not have had the financial flexibility to do that had it not been for our funding we received from you all, which we are eternally grateful for. And this position is also a little diversion from what we've traditionally done. You all may remember Bob Elliott, who was our longtime CFO. We ran a skeleton crew. We've had Jack Dugan at the top working with Bob Elliott and as a CFO. And we may have had a property manager at one point, but we really haven't had too many program specific positions on set. So this additional capacity allows us to apply for more funding, more programs to be able to expand our reach. So going into the childcare program, so last year we launched what's called the Bringing Home Project. So this is an approach that we are taking to work with family-based providers, those that want to run daycares from their homes. Sure, if you wanted to quit your job today and you wanted to run a daycare from your home, don't do it, please. You're doing a good job, but if you wanted to quit tomorrow and run a daycare from your home and you wanted to serve, half a dozen neighborhood kids, our Bring It Home Project program.
I think that's
And he escaped our program. He didn't even come into our program. But we would give you everything that you need in order to do it professionally and legally and legitimately. So we'd help you master running and owning and managing a business. So you would know, you'd have a business plan, you'd have your marketing plans. We'd work with you one-on-one to do that.
Yeah.
Alexa would work with you on quality supports and services. So figuring out best practices for actually
Physical kind of things, the door locks and everything.
we do actually. We do. So Alexa will work with you on quality supports and services, so best practices for actually providing the care itself or the child caring itself. And then we work with you to access workforce development funding so that you can get additional college credits or anything that you need to gain licensure in New Hampshire or license exempt status, which Alexa helps you walk through the various hurdles and hoops with DHHS and the New Hampshire Child Care Licensing Bureau. And then at the end of it, we'll come in and help renovate your house. So if you need to knock a wall down.
You didn't tell me that part.
They're the catch though, you gotta have a bunch of little kids running around all the time. For a couple of years, but.
Grandchildren on occasion.
I don't see a problem with that.
But if you need to knock a wall down in your basement to expand your footage downstairs, if you need to put up fencing, if you need to smooth out a backyard so you don't lose any ankles. Handrails, ramps, even if you need like a new fridge to keep milk and sacks cold for all the kids that are coming in your house. That's funding that grant funding that we're able to provide because of the grant that we received from the Community Development Finance Authority. So this is it's something that we are not, New England has not really been taking this approach too much. Other parts of the countries have. We're not aware of anyone else that's been doing it in the way that we're doing it, but this approach seems a model in the state. So the Community Development Finance Authority created a $1 million family childcare program modeled after what we're doing here. And we've got a lot of statewide attention, New Hampshire Bulletin. Anne Marie Timmons have done an interview. We've done interviews with her. We're in the March edition of Business New Hampshire Magazine, highlighting what we're doing for the pilot. So far, the impact, we're working with 6 providers right now, who are expected to create up to creating 35 new childcare slots in the region for a capital investment that is significantly less than it would be for a center. If we were to build a new childcare center from scratch and that would house 35 new slots, our capital investment for this program is significantly less than a quarter of what you'd spend.
What's the area need? I mean, 35 is great, but what is the projected?
Yeah, Cody, like, I'm missing a lot, it's killing me over here. So what is really unique about this program and why the shift has changed is that childcare providers are now being viewed as business owners. They're being viewed as entrepreneurs and they're getting those resources that other business owners are getting. So there's just in New Hampshire in the last 4 years, there's been over $400 million that's been allocated to childcare stabilization.
Wow.
It's the only industry that supports every other industry. So think about that for a minute. Without quality childcare, we have in New Hampshire 21,000 children between birth and 5 that are not currently in childcare programs. So the question becomes, how do we create these placements, but how do we create sustainable businesses and create this new network? So that's what we're trying to do right now. We, as in Medic and other community stakeholders, we are looking at the work that childcare providers are doing, whether it's Head Start and Center or family-based model. They're all childcare providers, they're all educators. So we're making that shift in the perception and we're creating a professional network for these providers. So putting Medic at the hub, putting the county at the hub and saying, what do these providers need? How do we create sustainable, safe, high quality programs? And Chris, you asked that, what's the need for this? We need support with that network. So we need support with the hub. We need, just as you would take someone else who is working in education or any other industry, they are serviced by a professional community of practice. They have an opportunity for professional development, for resources, and currently family childcare providers do not have that. If they have a question with funding up until this point, they've been left on their own to figure it out. If they need specific professional development to meet the needs of the children and the families that they're serving, that doesn't exist before. They're going out and they're finding that information. If they need program kits or materials, they're having to resource that all on their own. So what we're doing by creating this network, creating this hub, is a centralized place for all of these providers to have a professional community of practice, a professional place for resources that they can also be interviewing families. So it just creates that higher level of professionalism and credibility for these providers. It has been done in some other states very successfully. I know in New York State, there are more children, including New York City, there are more children in family childcare programs and in centers.
So, when it comes to these, to families, getting, I know that kids, it was crazy.
Astronomical.
It was almost not worth
Mhm.
it. In some cases, especially in some jobs. You earn we more than it comes to take your kid to a job. So how will that be?
So what Cody touched on it a little bit, is where one of the major benefits of having these smaller based centers or providers out of family homes is their overhead is significantly less. So in return, the cost to the families, their tuitions is also going to be less. If we're looking at subsidies, then we're looking at grants, and we said we can support these providers and create this network. We decrease those overhead costs even more, which allows the providers to put more of their earned income back into their pockets. One of the biggest challenges with childcare is it's not a profitable business model, right? They're not our community superheroes because they want to make this money. They are doing it because they know that their friends and their neighbors and their family members need to go to. So by having all of these different programs and creating these networks, we're able to get all of those costs reduced, which in turn becomes less of a cost in tuition for the families. My kids are 4 and 5, and we paid $28,000 for preschool last year.
For two children.
For 2 children,
Oh,
for preschool. We're looking at, we enrolled our kids in St. Joe's, which is a private school, and we are taking a sigh of relief because it's only $17,000. Our children, it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing this great migration of people leaving the workforce because it doesn't make sense financially for someone to stay in the workforce when they're just making a little bit more. So the big shift in government is it's now a business issue, it's not a social issue, and we're seeing just in New Hampshire, the lost income because of childcare deficits was over $4 billion last year. For family income revenue, it was over $600 million. So it is a huge financial detriment to the businesses in New Hampshire, but also the families as well.
But if you look at the continuum of care, which we do here, the 21,000 you're talking about earlier, that 21,000 socioeconomically, I bet there's a high percentage that are challenged, okay?
A large percentage.
And any study will tell you, those kids that don't have that type of opportunity are at higher risk of what? Being at risk of out-of-district placement, having struggling through schooling, becoming valued members of the community, and guess where they may end up? Drug court, sheriff's department, county attorney's office, DOC.
Yep.
And that's the importance of the work that you're doing, is giving these families the opportunity, and that they just don't. I was in a meeting yesterday with 30 business people. Luca was having the morning breakfast he has, and so I started talking. He asked me to talk about why the county got, and I talked about the 3 phases. What I always try to hit upon is that we have a relationship with Southwest Regional Planning Commission that does policy, does data, brings collaboration together. We've got the partnership with Medic in that they're gonna get their hands dirty. They're gonna actually go out and do that level of work, that they're gonna utilize some of the work that Southwest Regional Planning Commission is doing. And then I talked about the, Greater Monadnock Collaborative and the work we're doing there and the partnership there. And I had 2 business leaders come up to me afterwards, and I said, it's our job to be involved. We don't have to build an infrastructure within the county to make that happen if we have people in the community doing it. And they were actually really excited and applaud us for looking at this way. And because they said we need it. One guy said, I had a woman leave last week because exactly what you said. Her husband got a new job and got a better health care plan. That was the only reason she was staying at the company she was at, because she was losing money paying healthcare, but the health care plan was the thing that was keeping her there. So when her husband got the better plan, she left to take care of the child because it's break even.
So you said that childcare isn't a moneymaker, but I would hope that.
It can be, it
I
can
would hope
be.
so, because for it to be sustainable in the long run, you have to make it worthwhile. Because listen, the person taking care of the 10 kids,
Mhm. Right,
whatever the number is, they also have to make a living.
right.
And that's why we focus on the business development side of them, because really to do anything right, you have to, like, if you're managing an organization, you have to master two things. You have to master the technical side of the craft itself. You have to be a great childcare provider, but you also have to be a professional business owner. So that's where we come in, and like Nancy from our program manager will help them with the business advice and piece one-on-one that will tell them what they need to do for a marketing plan, a financial management plan, identify accountants, attorneys, that corporate structure that they need, figure out if they should go an S corp or an LLC, or how they should do that. So that way we're creating multi-generational sustainable businesses for a multi-generational impact.
I mean, coming back to Terry's question, I don't know what the price ought to be. Because let's say, for example, one person in the soul stays home and runs the
Mhm.
care center. Or maybe there's 1.5%.
Yeah, the ratios.
There's a multiplier so that the person that's running the childcare center can actually end up making $45,000 a year to make it worthwhile to stay home.
Well, it really has to have a relationship to what it costs. But,
Yeah,
but many times it gets, stock market kind of theory, where it's not necessarily what, in a relationship to what it costs, is what I can get. That's what's driving a lot of these things out of people's.
but my bet is, I think it's like, well, listen, on 10 kids, you're gonna have to do this.
You're gonna do the full
All that stuff, so here are your expenses, and then you get a sense of how many people they can handle. What they need to make, because otherwise they have to go into the workplace.
They had a lot of
They're
it
gonna have to
too.
make $15 an hour, you know, at Target or someplace, or $12 an hour, you know, whatever. So they're gonna, you know, they have the potential, if they don't do this, to make 30,000 out on the street. But that's a tight income bracket, you know, so, you know, that's really the balance. You have to motivate financially. So I don't know how that boils down to the number of kids in the house and what they pay. And whether it's substantially different than, say, $15,000.
We help the providers to understand the economics of running a business. I'm always asked, what is the biggest barrier you see in child, especially family-based child? My answer always is that these providers and their educators do not view themselves as small business owners. They do not view themselves as entrepreneurs, and therefore they do not think that they're eligible or qualified or have the rights to these access and programs that other entrepreneurs do. So it's changing the mindset. I always say to Cody, we're very much in the sales period of family-based childcare right now. Everyone, I'm sure when you think of family-based childcare, you have an image in your mind that it's not safe, that it's unregulated, that it's more children to ratios than that probably should be. And out of our 6 providers that we have right now, 2 have masters in education. All of them have worked in the education field. They want to do something a little bit different. We have one that is a nature-based, one that she wants to be STEM. We have one that's religious-based. So it also, in these critical developmental years for these young children, it gives families the opportunity to choose which type of environment and which type of educational philosophies align best with their families, not what's available at what price point. Any time that we're talking about childcare, especially in a family's home, there's a high level of risk. We know that it's more likely that there is going to be maltreatment of children in these environments, especially if you have educators that don't have the right requirements and training, background and education, professional development. So we go out and we see them 8 times in 6 months. We're going to their sites, we're visiting their programs, we're ensuring that they're safe, we're looking for quality indicators, we're looking for ways that support them. We have a grant that we propose that's 51 hours of direct support per provider in 12 months. So that's 15 hours that we are making phone calls, we're checking in with them. They're coming to our monthly cohort meetings, we're providing professional development, customized training. So we're looking at each individual provider, looking at their backgrounds, their needs, their visions for their program, and working very deliberately and efficiently with each of them to grow their programs, make way to find opportunities for them to be sustainable. Most, the typical lifespan for a family childcare provider is 2 years. Their children ages out and then they go and work at Target, they go and work somewhere else. So we are losing fantastic educators, and let's be reminded, they
And
are
then
educators.
When their kids grow up and they age out, then what happens? They go get a real job.
It's a real job, right?
Right.
And that's my point. This seems to be a real job.
Right, yeah.
Well, and it's, in my world of thinking, the need is so strong that it's 2 levels. What you're doing, but I still say, we need to be talking to school districts around universal pre-K.
Mhm.
Because Caldwell School District is doing it. Every school has a universal pre-K setup in it. And it costs money, but at the end of the day, if you can tell the story of what it means to manufacturers and get them on board around supporting this, it's an easier sell. And it's something that the school district, I've asked Rob Millay for a meeting in the near future to talk about a few things, but one of them is it's like, why not take a look at it? If I'm a taxpayer in the city of Keene, I get it. My taxes just went up extremely so with the city. And then, the school district also bumped them up too. And I get that, but if you're gonna do a program like that has the ripple effect to keep manufacturers here, because now all of a sudden they're getting the 2 or 3 or 4 more employees that they weren't getting because they're staying home. We gotta think about that stuff. We gotta think in a bigger picture.
So do you have a sense that you want to talk about? In terms of
My
the
vision,
recommended size of, or capacity of a home-based childcare center?
capacity for what I believe the network has the capacity and ability, or what an individual provider.
I'd say an individual provider, so if I say I want to open up a childcare center.
Yeah.
You say, well, you should anticipate that you can charge maybe this month per day, and this is how many kids you probably have. It's a what to put down, there's things in the way. Are there any broad guardrails around the size and the?
So
You
it's-
thinking about starting something, Jack?
It's the most, one of the most heavily regulated industries that we have in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So we work very closely, I work with people, Child Care Licensing Bureau, DHHS, work with different nonprofit agencies to find out resources. But if you today decided that you did not want to connect with the state in any capacity, you could have up to 4 children apart from your own. So maybe you have 4 of your own children, 10 and under. You could have an additional 4 in your home without being licensed. It's called a licensed exempt. If you become a fully licensed family child care program, you can have 9. And if you're a family child care center, you can have up to 14. So let's do some math, right? So with
Square
2
footage,
teachers, with square
and
footage, yep.
Staffing ratios.
As long as you're within the square footage for inside and outside space and staffing ratios. So we really have an amazing opportunity to increase the number of childcare placements, but to increase the variety of childcare environments that we have as well. And where Chris is talking about future workforce, we know that, I say this all the time, one thing we know about children, depending on no matter where they are or socioeconomic backgrounds, they will get older, they will become our future community members and leaders, right? We know that. So if we're having these 21,000, which I think next year will go to 28,000 children between birth and 5 that are not in formal programs, then they are at more risk to need social services later on. They're not as likely to go to higher education. So we are really on top of our aging population. We're putting another massive barrier on the economics and future of our community because we're not investing in the children now.
So maybe like 2,000 homes.
Well,
states
not to say, right?
Statewide.
Oh, no,
That's
this number,
statewide.
oh, I thought that was, what is?
In New
No, it's not
Hampshire,
the
it's about 2,800 kids that are in Cheshire County that are not currently in
In
Cheshire.
Cheshire County.
Yep.
And with our first round,
Are or are not.
That are not in programs.
Okay.
So
20,000
that's
in Cheshire County.
potentially,
So that's-
1,400 families that have a parent that is not in the workforce because they are home with their children.
Child care centers which you supervise, do they pay for your overseeing services or are you covered by grants or?
yeah, various grants. So our first housing rehab grant will cover approximately 10 homes. So we're expecting to do 120 new slots. And we have other like like technical assistance programs that we're tapping into that can help with some of the quality supports, business planning side. So over the next year, we're anticipating serving 20 additional family-based providers here in the region. And we've also been prioritizing geographic diversity as well. So we have a cohort right now of 5 that's going through monthly meetings and business planning, who come from Keene, Swansea, Alfred, New Ipswich, and Gilson. And we have another one that we're working with in Fitzwilliam. We're starting another cohort later this year, and we have leads for providers in Walpole and a couple in Peterborough, Jaffrey, Hinsdale, working with Hinsdale Economic Development to help do a little outreach to try to recruit a new family provider, which we say recruit a new family provider, that's to recruit a new startup business.
So each one would be about 14 kids,
Probably up to 14.
up to 14
Up to
kids.
14. So every family, every
So
home is
we're
gonna
talking about around 2,000 homes that we need to develop in Cheshire County.
No, state is
No, I
not.
thought you said 28,000 in Cheshire County.
It's 2,800 in Cheshire County.
Oh,
and then currently 21,000 in the state of New Hampshire. Just
No one's
between-
granted them, nobody can take it.
and
like
we're,
200.
and we're looking to, and we're hoping, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We have a $600,000 congressional directed spending request pending through Senator Shaheen, who it's a request that made into appropriations, which would allow us to rapidly expand the program and have to be able to hyper focus on family-based provider expansion. So it's a very exciting time for the program, and it's a new industry really from a state public policy standpoint. Alexa spends a lot of her time in various like statewide calls and
But it already made it through Shaheen's overview.
Yeah.
She's recommended it to the committee. So now it's just up to the committee to come out and then a vote as a whole. And so, I mean, that's usually a good sign. So that, I mean,
3 more steps.
but also at the same time, that's why we go to DC,
Exactly.
to have that relationship.
And so when we went to DC, Alexa was the only one from New Hampshire representing childcare. And when we're on all these statewide calls with various like state agencies, Alexa is the only person that's actually been a family provider. So she's actually she helped write the guidebook for how to get licensed and how to start one of these for the Community Development Finance Authority they contracted with. They hired her to write that plan. It's exciting because a lot of other parts of the state are trying to replicate what we're doing here, and we're a couple steps ahead of where everyone else in the state is. So it's something like organizationally for MEDC, we couldn't stay on the side for this. And if all employers tell us the same thing, we need people. This is one way that we are being entrepreneurial and trying to create something new. And I think we have we're creating something here that's sustainable, that's long lasting, that'll provide that multi-generation.
But I also think it's one of those situations where the commissioners and the delegation chose to make a decision when you guys were at a crossroads to strengthen you guys so that you could get to that next level. Because of that, you're now here.
Oh,
And you're not doing multiple projects, you haven't even touched base on some of the housing stuff you're doing.
Yeah, so without county support, I wouldn't be here right now. We wouldn't have been able to make that transition. This is really the first year, and you all are familiar with our old business model of just focusing on like the bigger brick and mortar real estate projects, which are great. We've built the capacity to be able to take those opportunities on as they emerge for newer projects, because there is still need. When manufacturers need places to expand, or there's a big downtown property that's available. But we, this year is sort of the first year of the new business model where we've effectively replaced about a $90,000 loss in revenue. We replaced, which those were from management fees that we had from old projects. So when I say this is the first year of the new business model, this is the first year where we're not solely relying on like management and rental fees from those old properties that we would have completed about 7 years ago. So, and without county support, we wouldn't have been able to make these investments, launch these programs. Just in the interest of time, I'll just touch on some of the other housing stuff, unless anyone else has any questions.
Before you move on, could I ask, for the well-established childcare centers such as the Keene Family YMCA, and I know some of the local churches do it. How does the YMCA do? Perspective, do you know?
So,
In profitability,
Okay, in their in the efficacy of their programs.
they're doing very well. They're actually a leader in our community. There's a higher level of accreditation. It's called Granite Steps for Quality. There's 4 different levels for that, and they are working on step 3 right now. But I work with the local centers, I work with the college as well, to really look at the childcare ecosystem. We don't want to replace centers. We don't want to steal children from anywhere. I know just 2 centers, they have, their wait list is over 200. Right, and that's after clearing it out, so there are lots of children, and we're looking at other models in the area. We're bringing providers to those centers, curriculum, environments. So working with everybody that we can that's already in the childcare industry and taking the best of what they're doing and seeing how do we adapt and grow that in the childcare, and also looking at what's not working, right, and what are some of the common barriers, and how do we avoid those as we.
How does it get? Obviously, been a long time since I had to work with childcare. But when I did, Grant was still alive, so. What do people pay? They pay.
If you are, so my provider
For
today,
example.
she has the 2 kids for the whole day, and we'll pay her $150. And
$17 an hour.
it's significant.
It's
significant.
At least not. Like, $17.
It's more than sending your children to an in-state tuition for college. And it's more than the housing cost. It's roughly about 32%.
Kid,
Exactly.
How much?
58,000.
Yeah, if they go at $17 an hour, just might people out there base it.
Exactly. Yep.
and this is really a diversification of childcare availability. Some people like living in apartments, some people like buying homes, some people like living in duplexes. Some people prefer family-based centers. They may prefer a Christian-based or a nature-based family childcare environment, or they may prefer a YMCA or RISE or Montessori schools. And from MEDC standpoint, we've helped with like center-based childcare expansions. Over the years, we've worked with the Montessori school on Hurricane Road. We've worked with Footsteps and others just throughout the years. So it's, we support center-based just as much as we do family-based, but family-based is where our main business development program is right now.
Another large asset that family-based offers is non-traditional work hours. So if you have a parent that works 3rd shift, if you have someone who's working on weekends, centers are closed. Centers, if you have a center that has a 12-hour day, from 6 in the morning to 6 at. If you have a parent or a guardian or a caregiver that doesn't work those traditional hours, you're out of luck, right? Exactly. So these family providers are able to be more adaptive to families' needs. If you have children that have special needs or disabilities, we have one provider that focuses on foster children and emergency placements, and she's has extensive trauma training. So it really opens up a lot of opportunities. What we need to look at right now through local governments and municipalities is how do we support these providers? How do we create this centralized hub and network for them so that in 5 years, we're not sitting at this table again, having the same conversation? And I truly and fully believe it's through the development of a professional network.
And with that, I know we could go on all day
I
about.
know,
Yeah.
Interesting for us.
Yeah, I don't want to cut it short. Just to wrap up just some of our other stuff first. So our revolving loan fund program expanded this year. So we provided gap financing for the 310 Marlborough Street project over in Keene. That's 57 new units. We're able to get another funder on to provide some another low interest loan to be able to support that project. That's our first housing loan that we've made. We've always done housing by accident, just through the development of mixed use properties that have had condos, like 51 Railroad Street in Keene is an example of that. But kind of looking ahead, talk about the childcare program. As of today, we've got almost $1.5 million in pending loan requests, and about 300,000 in pending grant requests. Just for across all of our programs. So, as you mentioned, when I spoke with you all back in November, or back in October, we're just getting the wheels in motion, structuring our programs. Now's the fun part. Now we're getting the money out the door and implementing some of these things. We're expected to clean up to probably 2 to 4 sites through our brownfields remediation program that can help properties like Kingsbury property in Keene. And we're
movement on Kingsbury.
not that I'm aware of. But once
That's why I said good
You're
luck.
excited to be there.
You never know.
Never know. And we launched a housing development fund this year. The city provided some funding out of their budget this year to capitalize that, but we are speaking with businesses who are interested in investing in that fund so that we can provide flexible capital to businesses, to developers that want to create housing units of all kinds, whether it's buying and rehabbing a duplex to building a big apartment building.
And just remember too, when you think 310 Marlborough Street and you say 57 units, double that. Because if somebody's gonna live there, they're probably leaving someplace that's not open. So you're creating spaces every time. That's when I always say, with the 60 units we're putting up on Washington Street through Keene Housing, that's 120. Because those people are coming from somewhere and that's gonna open up space. So everything moves when you create space and create new housing.
So, with that program, that's one we're very excited. We'll have more information about that later this year as we continue to grow that. But that's something that there isn't really a market in New Hampshire for gap financing for housing projects. So there's really that missing middle is the projects that don't qualify for the tax credits that say that Keene Housing will use to develop their apartment buildings or luxury condos and McMansions. Everything else in between that people that fall in that middle end of the income spectrum, this is really one program that will be able to help for-profit, nonprofit developers of all stripes. Whether it's somebody reached out to us yesterday wanting to talk about a tiny home development. I don't know much about tiny homes, but we're willing to look at it.
My understanding is they're small.
Yeah, a lot smaller, A-frames,
Problem there is we don't explain.
Yeah.
I wanted to put one in Eli's neighborhood.
that program, we partnered with the Monadnock Interfaith Project, they're doing grassroots advocacy, to launch that program, so we partnered with them a little over a year ago, to be effectively fiscal sponsor and manager of it. So we can tag team our outreach to specific businesses, communities, developers, in pursuit of getting those projects done and getting funding to grow that program. And lastly, on our brownfields program, We're looking at a couple, so this is money that we received from the EPA for grant loans. We're looking at a couple sites this year, WW Cross in Jaffrey. The McGoldrick Paper Company site in Hinsdale, or the cannery building in Winchester. Those are all abandoned factories that have a lot of contamination. So the program is now open. We're accepting applications. We're developing some of the marketing for it to spread the news to the world. But if there's a community municipality that's tax deed of an old factory that needs to be cleaned up, we can provide them some grant funding for it. Or if there's a developer that wants to, Kingsbury, or any of the other ones, we can provide very low interest loans, with very flexible terms to do the cleanup. To get that up and going, so there can be new housing, new community space, new industrial space, whatever it may be. We're an industrial area, so there's plenty of potential gas stations, laundromats, factories that need to be cleaned up, and the EPA and DES are actually encouraging us to apply for more funding. So once we get some of our money out the door this year, we can apply for up to 3 million more in non-competitive supplemental money from the EPA. Depending on how the election and all that goes, but that would triple our program. And there are no other active programs in the state right now, that local organizations have, so that's one that we're getting a lot of attention for. And it's another way that we can engage communities. We've never been in a position to give grant funding to municipalities. We've always helped them implement their master plans and build buildings, but we've never been able to engage them that. So that's another one we're excited for. We work very closely with Southwest Region Planning. They actually approached us and encouraged us to apply for the program. But we work with them to structure.
Are we going where?
Hey, zone it.
Where are you going?
Zach is
We're gonna
tonight.
go you.
But in conclusion, the work that we do is behind the scenes dirty work. There are a lot of different groups in housing, childcare, and all these issues that meet, a lot of task forces. A lot of us are all on those that have differing levels of production and results. All the programs that we do, it's very real. Very real. You can touch it, you can feel it. We're gonna start rehabbing homes later this year for childcare. We're gonna start cleaning up factories in Cheshire County this year. We're gonna provide funding and deal structuring to housing projects of all kinds. It's very real. So it's the exciting part of what we do. And we look forward to working with the county and everyone else in the year ahead. I'm always happy to come back and present, give an update or childcare or anything else under the sun.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you all would have received I gave a little bit of a town by town breakdown, some of the other stuff we've done. And I won't go into that, just so we can move on, but.
Glad to see so many county towns in there. This wasn't too many years ago.
Yeah.
It was only key.
That's.
Yeah.
And county funding, actually, so.
Can you
county
also,
funding,
with your.
We run on a
childcare
business
system,
model where we have to build.
Give us an idea of the,
We have to build for our.
where it's
And
not
county
too
funding
centric,
allowed
it's
us to,
countywide,
like, working with like.
and what
Swan's
that
economic-
ramification could have, because if
Build
it's in
for
Jack,
program that we
year to year.
bill for that.
We have.
So county funding allowed us to
the
do that. Allowed us to.
So we're-
Work with like
we went
the
to-
local energy commission out to try to figure out how to get free phase.
Extending out a
or-
little bit,
that's-
following the medic.
Or like very random issues.
So Sullivan,
Yeah.
England, Cheshire,
Really.
maybe a little bit into Peterborough.
Peterborough, I
Really?
think Temple is.
So the town has an economic development committee.
The upper
But
Valley
they
region,
look at.
they are handling.
Yeah, they don't, it has to changes.
They
Kathy
will
works from,
handle
there's a chamber board. She's the chair now, and she's looking to make some good changes there. And we present there a couple times a year.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time today. Is there any other questions that you have?
No, it's great. It's good. No,
Great presentation. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And we'll add any of the stuff that you've sent into the minutes so that we have that, so people can see that.
Yeah.
And it will also, we can also put it in some video at some point.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Of course.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
Very,
We're gonna do everything in our power to be there if we may be. a few minutes
I
late.
am currently operating as an independent consultant.
All right, next up would be,
Okay, great, yeah.
is my report, but Doug's at the top of that list.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're very
See?
welcome, guys.
That's one way to
Thank
do
you.
it.
All right, good.
I even put a little star next to it. See, man?
thank you.
Yeah, so 12 o'clock or a little thereafter, we have an opportunity to do a tour, we chose to.
The jail?
No,
Oh,
Yeah.
of the building?
Yeah. yeah, so if you.
I think I've seen the jail.
Next door building downtown.
Across the street. Never mind.
Yeah, keep going.
Never mind.
All right. Yeah, that's,
Okay.
Doug, I'm gonna let Doug has a little bit of a conversation that he wants to bring forward so that you're made aware of some of the great work that's going on with this opportunity. I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, just wanted to brief you on a project that has definitely implications for the county. Down the road, it's just getting started, but, the sequential intercept mapping project, first of all. That's a project that's part of a larger initiative in the state, improving the court and community response to individuals that experience, mental illness. It's being led by Chief Justice, McDonald, and, the New Hampshire status of this project is each county, the first one to go through this process. Intercept mapping was Merrimack County, I think almost 2 years ago. We were the 5th county that came together in June 12th and 13th. There were 50 participants from the court system, criminal justice, law enforcement, providers, mental health, substance use, housing representatives, peer agency representatives. And what it is, so, yep, we're gonna get there. If you want to hand those around. Sequential intercept is a model that goes back, probably over 20 years. It's a way to provide a conceptual framework for a community to organize strategies for dealing with individuals with mental illness, co-occurring disorder, substance use that are already involved or at risk of becoming involved in the justice system. And the model is the way that depicts the system as a series of intercepts starting very early. If you look at your graph there, intercept 0 is really before they become involved at all. The very end is actually at the point of sentencing. That's quite late in the process. But it's a way to assess in local area, what are your existing resources? And if we can hand that one around. And what are the gaps? Right? And the goal, based on research, is when possible to divert people out of criminal justice and into either through prevention or treatment. That's the actual map, and it's very small print of what Cheshire County looks like, if you will, each point of the intercept. So in this 1.5 day workshop, people came together and basically built this map and assessed where is Cheshire County at. And I will send you a full report on the Cheshire County sequential intercept mapping and electronic version. It'll give you more detail. But out of there were 3 areas that this group in Cheshire County identified as the priority gaps. And they were a lack of sober housing, particularly for women, a lack of a place for law enforcement to take someone experiencing a mental health crisis, especially after hours during the weekend, other than the emergency department, and potentially to intercept them at that it's probably intercept one on there. And the third one is we don't have a formal pretrial diversion or pretrial services program. And so the project split us into 3 groups based on interest level and aligned with where we work. And the task groups were assigned to basically keep the work happening, keep this moving forward. Somehow, I guess I didn't touch my nose in time when you said nodded. I became the facilitator for the pretrial services project. And that's the one, unless you want the sequential intercepts, the broader picture. The pretrial services has some implications for the county, including looking for grants and then potentially support from the county for funding. And I'll tell you a little more about that unless anybody has any questions about the general idea of sequential intercept. Good on that. All right.
So how do we put it? I mean, if you have any, put something like that in place and activate it.
Well, I guess my question, is very similar to that, how is this different than what we've been trying to do for 25 years with we've done diversion, we've started 25 years ago with mental health court and substance abuse, and that the issue has always been the lack of referrals and the lack of services. It's exactly what you started to talk here. So how is this gonna change anything?
Some of those existing programs are mapped out and they're working, they're on the continuum. And you might say they ought to be used more often, and that's a legitimate question. We certainly have pretrial treatment options that are happening at a very individualized level and within not the drug court, because that's post-conviction model, but behavioral health court.
Right.
Judges have the option to individualize a bail order that it says to effect may go to PR bail upon entry into clinically appropriate treatment. But we don't have a formal program, okay? And we started this discussion back with Judge Kissinger about 4 or 5 years ago, and we were trying to look at developing this. He got reassigned and the project just sort of died. There are 4 counties that do have a pretrial program, and those are Belknap, Grafton, Merrimack, and Stratford. The first thing that our group's doing is researching the existing models rather than recreate the wheel. What do they do? How's it working? What are their numbers? Just to give you a sense of what it probably would look like, based on the consensus elements that I'm seeing in researching those 4 existing programs. You have a staff of at least 2 and I think up to 8 in the largest. I think Stratford has the biggest program. They're literally seeing, in most cases, every pretrial detainee at the House of Correction before the initial arraignment, which is no small feat depending on the numbers. They're assessing them with a standardized risk instrument, and they're providing that written document, report, and in some cases, they're showing up at the hearing to answer questions and provide more information to the court, and mainly the judge, to inform the initial bail decision. The model is, and the philosophy, including if you look at, there's a National Association of Pretrial Service Programs. that is really what would be considered the best practice based on research. It certainly would emphasize, taking more risk, releasing more people than we're doing now. But there's philosophical differences, right? Probably that's without getting caught in the weeds, that's probably back to, well, why don't more people get referred to existing programs now? And I don't want to digress too much. I think generally prosecutors are.
And the police and prosecutors, they never.
They're more reluctant generally than, say, your defense attorneys and then like these liberal social work.
Because what you described was exactly how behavioral health court, mental health was started. It was supposed to get together before arraignment. And no wrong door, no wrong time. Anybody could raise the issue of substance abuse or mental health and present that disposition and all of that.
Yeah.
Just, if,
But
when you
one of
don't
the-
have 100% buy-in, you only have prosecutors and not people like us, treatment providers that are interested in that. Prosecutors and police kind of poo-poo it, say no, needs to be punished.
So I think it's a changing culture, it's growing, and you know, I may be out here on the continuum of liberal or progressive thinking. When we were developing mental health court originally, 20 years ago, when we were developing drug court, even in the coming together to plan those things, just like this project,
Yeah.
there's an educational process.
We
There's
spent a
these
year.
best practice standards, and the culture is very different than it was back then. But it's a slow process.
Very
But this group includes our pretrial group includes most of the right people, I think, are gonna be at the table. Judge Smith from Superior Court, Judge Tessier from District, Chris McLaughlin, Alex Parsons, the lead at the Public Defenders, Ryan Conover, Chief of Probation on there, Bill Wyzek. Allison is on there. You're on
That's
the,
next month,
you on
the
the,
drug court,
oh,
the treatment court.
aren't you on the task, the one looking at the crisis screening state?
Oh, I thought it was about the treatment.
Oh. Well, Allison's on this pre-trial planning.
Oh.
You know, it's interesting because I suppose it's timely to resuscitate the program that we spent a year. We spent a year after we got back from Seattle. You went to Seattle, didn't you?
I did.
What, 25 years ago, 24 years ago?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because it was just after I started the county. We spent a year with police, prosecutors, judges, court staff, meeting over in the courthouse, or somewhere, I can't remember, to put together, everybody's playing well together in the sand, because even back then, we still had a majority of people that by the time you get here, 70–80% have either substance abuse or mental health, and we need to do something. We've never gotten past more than 10% referrals, because it's very high, so. Suppose it doesn't hurt to kind of revisit it and try to.
Well, let me say one thing that's different at this intercept. This risk assessment is really, that would be developed, and there's a few practice research-based tools. The ORAS, Ohio Risk Assessment, has a pretrial screening instrument. And there's one pretrial PTA I'm not familiar with, but it's designed to measure risk, primarily for, not showing to, appointment to future court dates, and there's a public safety aspect. And a person that gets approved to be in the program, will be followed very closely, and a lot of it is monitoring. It definitely will have an interface with our electronic monitoring program here at the jail. But it's designed to help people stay connected to the court system so they do show up. And there's resources at the front end. Now, it can include also referrals out to programming, substance use needs like behavioral health court case managers will do, mental health, medications, housing, benefits. It has all of that. These same staff, or some of the same staff that do the initial screenings, end up with a case of people. Just to give you an idea, which to me, these numbers are fascinating. Stratford County is the most developed program by far, from what I can see. And they probably are in a different place in both the development of the programming, their buy-in, like philosophically, like buying in. They're a bigger county, their jail's bigger capacity, but they have 220 federal inmates, 200 federal inmates, 80 ICE detainees, and only 100 county inmates. And they have 350 people out in these pretrial programs. Presumably, a large percentage of 350 people, were they in another county without this model in place, would be incarcerated. Where the break is. Chris and I wanted to introduce it. I absolutely think it's got the right political clout behind it and the right people locally at the table, that this is gonna get some traction and move forward. So you'll be hearing more about it.
Well, I hope so.
So I wanted to speak on the other end. Cause he's talking about the after arrest. And I wanna talk to you, I wanna piggyback, and so I wanna talk to you of anything pre-arrest or no arrest, when there's law enforcement contact, when there's a mental health crisis where law enforcement is dispatched to go and they, okay, our only resources, take them to the hospital and let them figure it out. So I sat on that task force with Chief Stewart from Keene, basically with the same concerns, you know. We're here, we're the first ones to get called. We show up, we show up to crisis, we have no place to go with them. We end up going to the hospital. The hospital doesn't know where to send them. And either they end up back on the streets or they get involuntarily admitted, but we don't have an in-between. So what my group is focusing on is using some of the current assets. Are we using the current assets within the county to its full potential? Are we able to create a crisis stabilization unit where, hey, this is Eli from the sheriff's office. I'm having a crisis with this person, you know, there's no offense. He just needs some attention now. And he's gonna go to the hospital instead of the ER. That's not gonna work because the ER is not gonna give him what they're gonna look for. The medical condition versus the medical health. So, they probably just need like a peer support versus any, in-house. They just need someone that will sit there with them and talk and give them some time to kind of bring them back down. So that's the kind of the focus that my task was looking at, and how do we provide more services when the law enforcement is encountering a mental crisis after hours, on the holidays, which tends to happen the most. We found that yes, there's MPS within Keene provides that peer support. They're able to kind of expand and provide, hey, we can become a drop-off zone for at least 23 hours with somebody who's in that crisis, but at least with the wraparound services from either MFS or psychiatric or something, psychiatry, you know, that can help us kind of stabilize that person, you know, calm them down, which is sometimes all they need is someone who will spend a couple hours with them and help them deal with the crisis versus going to an ER, going to sitting at a lobby at a local police department, trying to figure out what to do, which is what was happening now. So we felt that was an avenue that we can explore, and where our biggest void was within our county, with a person that doesn't end up arrested, charges, pre-service, this is just like, hey, they're just calling us. MFS does have a mobile crisis response team, but they're very limited as to where they go because they just don't have the staff. And they're right now only focusing in Keene before they even expand. So, that's kind of where we're at in my task force as to what can we do. We identified, like I said, we identified that MPS and Keene could be that center of that in between. That we just have to expand and they have and kind of like part of 23-hour drop zone where someone can come in, have a bed, relax and stuff like that and deal with that issue and allow for maybe some services to be arranged while they're in that little 23-hour kind of crisis stabilization place. So I did talk to Suzanne and gave her an idea of what, again, this is gonna be kind of competitive because we're gonna be competing for the same grants for different, that Suzanne about what idea we were looking for within our county and how can we do it. Suzanne has identified already 4 grants that are specific to these programs through law enforcement, with a law enforcement partnership, and also the addition of a social worker to help kind of process this. So our goal is to kind of, or the task force meet again with Suzanne, tell exactly what it is that we're looking for to see whether there are potential funding out there to, one, help NPS kind of create the facility. They just kind of do what they have to do to make it happen, become a receiving crisis stabilization place. With MFS and some other partners becoming that wraparound services when that person, hey, we just took in Eli, we need to create a program, we need to, where do we go from here? Okay, hey, he can come see my psychiatrist, he can come and do a visit at MFS. We'll have a sit down with a master, whatever you like, whatever they call those. What do you call it, late master type of, whatever that might be, or mental health person. Yeah, certified person, a doctor, whatever, to kind of create something to help that person get back on track. But that initial drop, where do we drop them off? What are we taking when we're dealing with that crisis? What's missing here? The caveat with this, in which I've also asked Suzanne to look at, the ability to provide a social worker, like something like Keene has, that services other county police departments. Whether, hey, all said, hey, calls, hey, I got this, we got him in the crisis center, and so can you guys help him with the other part? So we felt that we could become that hub for the small departments around us by providing a social worker that could be, doesn't have to work out of the sheriff's office and go work somewhere else.
How much infrastructure are you looking at here?
Infrastructure is in building, no.
You need a working mental health unit with.
Well,
food.
Yeah, well, like MPS right now has room for, they can bring up to 6 people right now. If we went this to, right next to the fire department.
In
Vernon Street where the visiting center used to be. Yeah.
MPS could bring up to right now, if they had the staffing and they can do some remodeling and some tweaking or something, they can become a crisis stabilization, because they have room for up to 6 people. They can do 6 people if we went in that direction. But they have to kind of build it, but they have
This is about staffing.
about staffing, maybe a little more, some training and some getting everything set up through, whatever the state in order to make it become, so. So social worker, if we were to go that direction, where it could be housed, whether it's housed here at my office, whether it's housed out here at the jail, whether it's housed at EMS, there's no specific place that person has to be. It will be something, hey, this is one of my deputies dealt with that person. We need some help kind of getting back in back on track, something that Keene has one right now. They just hired a person to do that. And she's not like she's just a social, worker, that kind of helps guide the person, hey, go see versus go see, the sheriff's office, to help you get you started versus here's a card, call MFS. They're probably gonna give you an appointment for 2 weeks, but we can kind of skip some of that by kind of getting that in-person critical right off the bat assistant, which is, I know Doc can probably, no, you can't give somebody a card or tell them come back in 3 weeks after, when they're suffering for a crisis, because in 2 days, they're gonna like, forget about it. If you don't handle-
Whose authority would this be,
Excuse me?
under whose authority, what kind of silo is this?
Well, it will, well, there's a lot of, the mobile crisis center will be under, they're handled by, the crisis civilization will be on there, they'll be that's something done by MPS through a grant that we, as a partner, get from it. The social worker part will be actually employed by me, because of grants, there are a lot of grants that are out there right now that support that. To kind of, because that mental, what are we doing for mental health care? What are we doing for people in crisis? So there's a lot of grants, like I said, Susanna identified 4 that we could apply for that will cover what we're asking for. And I think when we're partnering with EMS, Cheshire EMS, myself and other people, I think there is the opportunity to provide that service, because I'm assuming that EMS itself do respond for these crises themselves, and they're gonna send them to the hospital.
You've already heard from Sarah Canal
Mhm.
about some of the issues that they face
Yeah.
on multiple levels, that have nothing to do with mental health sometimes.
Yeah,
It has to do with, elderly providers caring for their dementia and they're burnt out, all that stuff, so.
Yeah.
And Doug, am I right, in anything that you're talking about, everything is still in the early stages?
Yeah.
They're very exploratory, but you'd be looking for grants, but also. If the county was to house this would be probably in your mind, best bet would be to be a similar model of Stratford County, where it's a separate department within the county. It's not hooked to the DOC, it's not hooked to the county attorney's office. It is this identity in itself, entity in itself.
That's considered best practice because you want neutrality
Yeah.
in the decision-making, the screening process. And
Also from a grant
Sure.
perspective, too, I have to just intervene, is that when we were talking about all these cost allocation policies that Suzanne brought forward, if we got to make sure that it stands alone, because the minute you start intertwining a grant position into another department, all those policies that she just brought to you,
Yeah, come in
the way
place.
she interprets things is that we then have to start tracking everything associated with that department in that way. And so we most definitely, even if it's gonna be under a particular person, we want to track it on its own island.
Yeah, because if you gotta look at it, what Doug is saying, for the services that Doug is talking about, it has to be an arrest that triggers a criminal element to trigger somebody to go into the judicial system, right? So that triggers all those services. But we're talking about the person that we go to, is that gonna trigger a criminal element to it? But because we're the ones being called, now we kind of thrown into the deal with it. So we're trying to find that solution as, okay, to better serve that person, what can we do? Because all we're doing
Makes
is,
a lot of sense because it's
all we're doing is bring them to the hospital and then dealing with them the next day again because.
While I was gone, you talked about setting up a county operated mental health.
Yes, yes.
Center.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we talked about it
Mhm.
for 10 years or so, maybe longer.
Well, it makes a lot of sense because it's, you know more about it than I do. There's so many people who don't belong here.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's the only system we have. to put them in. Yeah.
Stratford County had a 92% fill rate in court appearances for that pre-trial. just to give you a number, which is excellent. Yeah, and I think the timeline for the pretrial service project realistically is over a year. Some, I think, including if any of it involves our budget process, we're gonna be too late in the planning of the 2025 budget, so we'd be talking about the 26 budget. And there's a lot of moving pieces to this. The work group hasn't decided how frequently we'll meet. Our first meeting post the initial workshop I described in June. Our first meeting is July 31st. My guess is we'll meet monthly. I don't know,
Are you gonna do, is the work group gonna do any site visits?
but potentially, yeah.
Because if that was the case, and as you go along, maybe you should come back to keep the commissioners in the loop, but you're gonna do, like, you're gonna go to Stratford for the day,
Mhm,
and these guys wanted to go over to see what Carrie's doing over there,
mhm.
then I would say that would be a worthwhile venture for the commissioners, because she's doing some good stuff over there.
Absolutely. Their program, I think is the furthest along, the one that impressed me the most. There is another piece of this that the work group could choose to take on, and that's a diversion. So Eli mentioned pre-arrest, there is some models and they're tagged in. A couple of these counties have.
No.
So, no. For, generally, the criteria for initial consideration are gonna be a lower bar, I guess, like, although some of them say they consider felony level arrest for this, but it's basically, if the person accepts it, chooses to go in the program, completes it in either 6 months for misdemeanor or a year-long program, they can avoid conviction on the initial matter. So there's variations of how quickly you divert and how that, the details of how that works. I don't know.
That sounds pretty similar to what we were mandated to do with juveniles.
Mhm.
You know, when you have an offense, before they actually go to court, they have to go to an established diversion program to see whether they can services or not before the officer brings them to the juvenile court. So one of the first questions you're gonna have is, was he given the opportunity to go to the diversion program before you actually brought whatever charges for? That's, I think that was kind of that concept of, hey, before bringing, you know, Johnny here for his first possession of drugs charge, was there an opportunity to give him a diversion opportunity for you even file a complaint?
Does the DOC here still have its protective custody program for a person who's intoxicated? And is that extensively used?
It is.
If you're
Yeah, it is.
We can run some tests.
If you're Otis.
There's over 200 a year protective custody cases. But just as one little example of something that already happened, I think out of this coming together of this sequential intercept process, we had an inmate here for protective custody last week. She was on meth or some substance that induced a psychosis. It was certainly not just alcohol. And at 23 hours, and we're under the law only allowed to hold them 24. We had to make a decision, and this is the first time this happened. We had Keene, who was the original agency or detaining. They came back over, basically reassessed and said, we're gonna extend this protective custody. We kept her. We called the statewide mobile response team, which has been developed over a year ago, but it's ramping up. But they were available to come out within the next 24 hours and help facilitate an IEA process for that individual. And saw her on site here. Never seen that happen, like. um, So it's all piecemeal, gradually, working together, but. I do, think this will get. I've seen a lot of things over the years that. We've talked about this before, we come back together 5 years later, we're talking about it. This has the right people behind it at a statewide level, and this has the right people at the table locally. That I think it's gonna move. So we'll definitely keep you updated.
Is there any renewed or resuscitated conversation about crisis intervention training for police officers? So that you don't have to wait for a separate trained crew, but you can just do what Seattle started doing 25 years ago.
It was discussed at the workshop. There's a percentage of officers trained. Challenge is still a lot about resources. It's a 40-hour program, Eli.
Well, the big excuse for the last 25 years has been, but gee, I have to pay an overtime or to pay somebody else to cover the shift of the training. So obviously, we don't treat it as much of a priority. If covering somebody is have to go through training, officers go through training all the time, we all do, right? But this particular training, we don't want to cover because somehow we don't make that financial commitment. And yet, we pretend to be concerned about these people that frustrate us all the time from a law enforcement point of view, as well as a treatment point.
Well, I'm gonna talk about my office, yeah, not all my deputies are trained in what you're talking about. But we have had training, similar to it without the title C. We actually spend some of the settlement fund and bring in a customized training to, Cheshire County. When it has to deal with mental health and the difference between somebody having a mental health crisis or a overdose or opiate or a reaction, out of different, in a different concept. Or even if you become addicted yourself and start to, so we had someone do that. That was an 8-hour day for us, which I think, we contracted for presentations. We've had 3. And I think we've already reached over 120 officers. Or people that have attended a training, from Cheshire County and even outside of the county. The latest one that we just had was last month and we had 35 people attend. So we might not have had that critical, title training, but we have had at least something in that area, that kind of gives an officers the tools to kind of get an understanding. We do have a couple that have been to the longer one, but they have gone. I think we were very.
Maybe this would be something we should use the opioid settlement funds. Presumably to do that. I mean, I'm just trying to, chronically. Persistent conversations about doing something about mental health and substance abuse, but never wanting to spend the money to do it. We're too busy. And it's really important, but.
Well, now you're starting to sound like, when we have a gun incident, they always say it's all about mental health.
Yeah.
But then they don't fund it.
That's the same thing. I mean, you'd have a good CIP, right? MFS would be able to do a lot more if you have wages that allowed people to make a decent living that would draw people into the career. But we don't, because we don't want to have money for those people.
Yeah.
And so it's always circles around to the county doing it because we tend to be humanely oriented and socially concerned about safety net services than the state or anybody else.
Right now,
Yeah.
like I said, I think I had a couple of my deputies go and a couple of dispatchers go to it. And I think, the state right now has a funding to cover that. They, you know, if people want to go to it,
The CIP.
the
CIP.
CI, the CI,
Intervention training.
crisis intervention, critical incident, crisis intervention, so they have for critical incident. Crisis intervention.
Yeah, I say crisis intervention, because we knew.
The CIT is originally Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Model crisis intervention training. CISD is
Incidents.
critical, and that's more for your first responders.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I agree with what you said. Hopefully, the commissioners are still humanely oriented as a group next year as a company.
Well, Bob and I, but,
Yeah,
Maybe we can bring it here.
you know, I've even thought we should actually give the hospital $100,000 to actually add to the salary, so they can actually hire psychiatrists and actually open up a mental health unit again. Psychiatrists are, you know.
Is that why they closed it?
Yeah, fundamentally, they could.
fundamentally, those are about funding.
But no, you know, psychiatrists don't make as much money, you know, psychiatrists ought to make the same amount of money as orthopedics are. But they about 30. And so there's not as many people going to psychiatry. You can, you know, you can work 8 to 4, 8 to 8, and be an anesthesiologist and.
My niece
make
is
$1.5
making-
million.
My niece, who lives in Boise, is killing it. Is killing it, she's does all the shrink work, all the, you know.
Doing the what?
Is she an MD or a
ND.
PA or an advanced?
She's an ND,
D?
yeah,
Psychiatrist?
Yeah.
And where is she?
out of was it Boise?
Boise,
Boise,
Idaho?
yeah.
No. But anyway, you know, it's a very typical thing. We obviously supported. It's like deja vu all over again. But it's been 25 years, new people, maybe some new energies.
I'm an optimist, 38 years doing this. Not many deja vu moments with
Yep.
committees and planning groups, like, yeah, we talked about this back in 1993 and
Yeah,
again in 2002. Here we are. again.
It's I call it a Stan Smith moment, and people always look at me, what do you say? If I keep my Stan Smith sneakers and I hold on to them long enough, they come back around in fashion. It's the same thing here, it's just coming back around, everything we're doing, maybe we're doing better this time around, but this is stuff that we've all had conversations with. I've been part of wraparounds, it's just. And you know, one of the biggest things we can talk about, even when Cody and Alexa was here, is that, you know, when they started taking apart the mental health systems in New Hampshire, what at one point was seen, especially the Nanook Family Service, as a jewel of how to do mental health care and prevention throughout the country, if not internationally. And then all of a sudden they started defunding it. I mean, a lot of the reasons we're here today and now we're starting to try to reinvent or rethink things is because they decimated the mental health system.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It started back then.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, the moment we had created, for example, MSS having really a stellar level and depth of services, they realized, Jesus, this is costing a lot of money.
Right.
Forget that stuff. They
Have a major impact, but that doesn't matter.
The same thing with alcohol treatment.
Yeah.
So. Well, they realize it's costing a lot of money.
We'll spend a lot more on corrections now than we
Right.
did back in
That's more
1960s.
Doug and I can probably.
I mean, look at.
But they
look
can serve
at
it,
Keys-
is what
look at
they're
Keys'
budget
budget.
said.
You know, eight and a half, almost $9 million for police now.
Well, they're just, you know, we're the first the first,
Yeah.
that's what they pick up, we gotta go with everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we
you know,
said back
And we
then,
didn't have anywhere,
but we said back then, in the chiefs back then, Costa, everybody used to say, we're gonna be the front line of this. You
Yeah, we
guys
always
keep
are.
funding it, we're the ones that are gonna have the impact on it.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect from what we're dealing with is when we hand it over, then they have to deal with it. it is.
We always.
I mean, look at when we did the study one year for a union negotiation, we looked at a study of how many incidents occurred with federal inmates and how many occurred locally. And it was like this, locally it had like 120
Yeah.
situations and we had like 8 for federal inmates. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But there's a lot of reasons why locals having some of the issues they're having. Drugs, I get it, it's mental health, I get it, but if you're not having any pre-prevention type work. You know, or anything, or not even seeing somebody for a month before, I mean, when you're in crisis.
And we thought we had a good thing going at there for a little while when we started with the recovery coaches and where we called the recovery coach and they came out and met at the ER. And that was good in place, but Molly got us the funding and to do that, and then politics got involved and the state wanted to take, yeah, the state wanted to take it over, make it a universal thing for statewide. Here's a phone number.
That's the first mention of recovery coach, which I've heard in years.
Yeah, so we were using recovery coaches to come out when we had somebody having a tough time, right? And it was pretty successful because they were kind of, at least they had that in-person connection with somebody who was not a unit. And then, you know, oh, we want to make it a statewide program. Here's the number. We'll try to get a recovery coach out there. Okay, here's a phone call from Keene. I pick up the phone in Concord.
Yeah.
It'll be 2 or 3. So it kind of, what we thought was a good thing. The state got involved and they went with a universal number and went downhill.
Yeah.
The thing is, we have to create programs to meet social needs and not kill the state.
That's wrong.
Because they will either steal it or try to kill it.
Well, that's the thing, they got involved because they were the funding source for this trial.
Yeah.
Thing, and they think the trial, they report back the trial, this is awesome, let's make it statewide. Oh.
All right, we'll go forth.
Yeah, no, I'm going for it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it by next week.
We'll talk to fiscal years 26.
You have 4 months to fix it.
Before I retire, fix it.
4 months to fix it. No, before he retires from the board, in 4 months, you got 4 months.
All right, I'm gonna keep on moving then. Next thing on the agenda is continuation of my agenda. This was actually part of my agenda, so. Next thing is, we are working on, we haven't forgotten about the refugee conversation. Rob Maggie's just been giving us names and it's just been a little bit of drag there. But we are gonna work on, when I come back from vacation, I think it is, or it's not next week, it's right? Are we looking at next week? I can't remember. Early August, what I thought. We're going to get together with the people that he's mentioned and really see how we move forward there.
Yeah, I think that would be a great, it's obviously gonna take years to kind of build up to it, but.
Yeah, it's just another piece of the puzzle. That's all it really is. Had a great conversation yesterday with the new rep for Senator Shaheen. She wants to be out here at least once a month or have conversations with me on a bi-weekly to a month basis. And she's gonna be reaching out to you, Davis, to set those up.
We need a new staff person.
New staff person, Madison, who was in that role, has left. She was outstanding. And so what's her name? Ally. Priest.
Couldn't remember that.
Yeah. It says, well, you're my daughter's name then. But so it was great because I really laid out a lot of some of the things that we're trying to work on here. And she said, she's like, you know, all I've heard when they said I was gonna take this, you just got the biggest gift of your life because you get to work in the area where Cheshire County is, because they're always just challenging the status quo. And doing some really good work, and the senator really enjoys hearing about it, and so that's good. So it was nice to have.
So did we send Shaheen's office the NACO award?
Yes, she was aware of it. She actually brought it up, said congratulations, by the way.
Right.
So,
Cause I haven't seen the paper yet.
yeah.
We haven't sent them a check yet.
We will be, but no.
Hey.
But no,
What's it come from me?
no, I met with the publisher last week, Sean Burke. And it's interesting because he would like to set up, I talked to him about the infrastructure thing we're doing. It's like, why don't we set up an editorial board? So that you guys can come in and talk about this thing you're doing. And then I brought another thing up. He said, that would be a good editorial board too. So I think they're looking for that type of conversation.
You know, all these things come back, because we used to do that.
Yeah,
That was 2 or 3 publishers ago,
yeah.
editors ago.
But then they went to press releases and then they call us and we send them, and we hammer them with press releases all the time. So we'll see. Out of the blue, the mayor reached out to me and would like to have a lunch with me. So I'll be meeting with the mayor. Possibly next week. County funds, so you had sent a thing in reference to county, Cheshire County Power.
Yeah.
And about, and my question, and I think Cheryl's question too, is that do we really need to set up our own capital reserve or whatever holding area for those monies if CPCNH is going to hold on to it until we request it?
Right.
Well, I don't think, I thought that they weren't going.
No, it was very clear. It's very clear that they are.
Yeah, they are. But the idea is not to, is to relinquish that over to the members eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah, so that's the only reason that I brought that up, is to think about the mechanisms that we have to have in place to be able to do that.
Yeah, I said the only real reason I'd want to probably do that is if I could get a good interest rate in a CD for 6 months while we held on to it, or a year or something, earn some added money to it, that's maybe.
Well, but it's worth asking and answering the question of the impact that it has on finances. If there's, you know, additional layers of audit and reporting and expense and associated, right?
Yeah,
That's what, because you could ultimately be talking about a fair amount of money.
Eventually, it will.
eventually could.
Eventually,
It's about 14,000 a year right now.
I keep suggesting that we need to add another full-time finance person. If for no other reason than the EMS department, but we're growing in terms of the extent to which we monitor from all over the place. Concerned about capacity. I still think we have.
Anyway, once we get into specific projects.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Then, you know, then there's just different mechanisms you need to have. Is it shovel ready? And all these specific things that, you know, intermingling grants and or it's the town of Peterborough actually brought it up because the IRS aspect of how they deal with grants and funding accounts. It's just something that needs to be considered so that we know.
They probably get a lot tighter after they lost that few $1 million. So Sharon, do you have some thoughts about what's being discussed?
Yeah, I do actually have some follow-up questions. So essentially, eventually, we will get our distribution from CPCNH for what we as Cheshire County, our portion, like for every community that is engaging in this, will get a distribution, but
No.
CPCNH
No,
is going to.
no, all of those other communities are under our membership. So that pot of money is all one pot of money, it's Cheshire money. But bookkeeping wise, it'll be broken down. According to participation of each one of the towns. But the towns that are part of the Cheshire Community Power under our membership, so that pot of money is technically ours.
So what I'm reading is, so if I read this, it says, we envision that CPCNH will collect the discretionary reserve adder through our normal billing process and will, at least initially and temporarily, hold the accrued discretionary reserve balance on your community's behalf through a custodial account. If you would like us to continue to hold the balance over time until you have a need for it, we will do so through the same custodial account. We will still simply keep adding to the account as new payments come in. Alternatively, we could transfer the balance to your community on a regular basis, such as quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Regardless, once you are ready to receive some or all of your funds, you will need to have some sort of an account to set up to house them until you expend them. So they have suggested that they will hold on to them and that they'll only distribute them to us when we actually need them. But I'm hearing from you, you don't want them to hold on to them?
No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that there needs to be a mechanism in place when we're ready to have that. And whether or not we want them to keep it, or do we want to have.
But if we take that a little step further, based on what you just read, why wouldn't CPCNH just hold the money and then distribute it to the members and be done with it? And then each town gets to worry about it. And we get to worry about ours, and we don't have to manage or track the allocation and sit on the dollars for the respective communities until they ask for it. Just give it to them and.
Well, because, okay, Peterborough is their own, they're member. Okay, they're their own town. Okay, our towns, you know, some Dublin, Chesterfield, et cetera, like that. Not members of CPCNH. Okay. They are a member of Cheshire Community Power. We are members.
Okay.
So my question would be then, so they hold it, but they don't hold $187,000. They hold 14,000 for Cheshire County, 12,000 for this, 12,000 this. Is it broken down within that, or is it
No,
Cheshire Power and this is it?
it's a pot of money, Cheshire Power. But just for bookkeeping purposes, we keep the amounts.
Because those towns are sub-recipients of our membership. They're not members.
Right.
They're kind of the beneficiary of Cheshire County's membership, which happens to include half dozen towns.
So when they send us a check, they're gonna send us a check for $187,000, not the 14,000 that's owed us.
Correct.
And then what we need to do is know what the percentage is for each town that's participating with this, and then we give them their percent.
Their dollar.
Let me
Correct.
step back here though, because I'm still not following. If they're collecting this on our community's behalf, because it's our communities, not, and they've noted that they will hold the balance until over time. They're basically saying they'll hold it. So let's just say hypothetically, we say, okay, go ahead and hold it. How are they going to be tracking how much is out of this, the different towns? Because they're gonna have to know that from the minute they come
Well,
in.
Because of the load.
What?
The load, they know how much load the accounts under, Cheshire County government are, you know, Maplewood, DOC, et cetera.
Yeah,
All of those loads have account numbers. And, so do the towns.
Yeah.
You know, they know where and how much load they have. So it's just a simple formula.
But then it would seem to me, it would be a good Henry question or somebody up there question to say, you're doing all this work. So they know what Gilsum's getting.
So
Because
why
they
don't
know
they
the
just-
load, they know the load for Gilsum, so they're gonna pull that amount out. And then they're just gonna throw it into a lump sum, or are they just gonna pull it out and under Cheshire Power, Gilsum's listed, and this is what they pulled out, you know what I'm saying? Seems like they're doing all this work, and then why would they not just separate it out, because they've already done that work to get the load in the first.
well, they're
place.
gonna have to. I mean, they're gonna have to. It almost sounds like, to me, the way it sounds is they're gonna have to do this up front.
Yeah,
And they're just willing to hold on to everybody's stuff until they're ready for it. Or they're gonna just give it, and maybe this is more of a conversation with Henry to really get, cause
Yeah, I'm wondering.
what
if-
I'm hearing
if
from you,
Cheryl-
Terry, is that they're going to basically initially track it, but then give us an opportunity as Cheshire County to accept it and track it again for something they'd be willing to do in the first place?
Well, I'm gonna say two things. I think, Cheryl, you probably have to just have a direct conversation with somebody up there that's tracking it.
Right.
But it sounds to me, if I heard it right. The reason CPCNH would cut us the check is because we're the member.
Right.
The other,
We
the
have-
other towns aren't members.
Yeah, they don't have an agreement.
They don't have an agreement. Those other towns have an agreement with us. We're the member of CPCNH, not the subsidiary towns that joined on with us. So,
It would be nice though if they do that, when they send it to us, if that's the way it's gonna be, and I do agree that Cheryl should have a conversation. But if they do that, that they send it with the break coming from them officially too, so it's not our interpretation. It is CPCNH
well, they'll.
interpretation, that's what I'm hoping.
They will because.
Formulas,
because
self-evident.
Yeah.
The 60+ members,
Yeah,
if all of them decide to do this, all of that money's going into one pot.
yeah,
The only thing that differentiated is just this Excel spreadsheet telling how much belongs to each one. It's all one big pot.
yeah,
It's not gonna be separate accounts. They're just gonna keep that under an adder account. Projects
Yeah.
account, whatever they call
yeah,
it. This right here, like I said, it comes from a request from the town of Peter to try to figure out the legal and best way to handle this money if it were to go to the towns.
mhm,
Whether you want to do it or not, we probably shouldn't do it. But
Well, we won't,
in case,
well, let's put it this way, we don't need to fix it.
yeah, no, we don't.
no.
No, but I just, we had a conversation, I wanted to bring it up because we had the conversation. And because of the emails and I was reading and Cheryl's reading, we're like, yeah, they're not clear. So
Who-
we'll
who-
reach out.
To Mark, this Mark Bollinger, should I talk directly to him?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mark Willinger would be the guy. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll
Okay.
reach out to him to get a better understanding of, because he does give 4 different options. I mean, and it's not just a revolving loan fund. So,
okay.
Okay,
All right, good. I have, 2 more things. One is, we have, for us going to NACO, we have, 11 to 11:30 meeting on the 14th, which is Sunday.
Yeah.
With NACO's, people. So that's an opportunity just to bring up anything, but the one is gonna be the infrastructure. We've already had one conversation via Zoom. And they were so impressed by the conversation we were having, when they wanted to have this, that's what drove this conversation. But if we want to talk about Medicaid rates, we want to talk about anything else that we think is important to us at this point, this is an opportunity. So we've got them. And what I've been told is, 11 to 11:30 is what they say, but if the conversation is going, they don't.
30 minutes is not long.
No. So, 2 is, actually I have 2 more things still, but they're quick. One is, that the, hearing, we submitted the monies up at, the state.
What?
Yeah, we submitted the request for the infrastructure money from the state for any opera
Oh,
monies that left over.
Yeah.
We sent a second letter up to directly to the governor to say, this is really important, look what happened in Massachusetts, with human error, and this won't be human error, this will be end of life catastrophic event. And, so we're hoping that gets through, but we're also hearing that the money that they have left over is a lot more than what they're saying they have. So that's a good thing, I hope. I hope they're right, that as much as 100 million that they have. So, that would be great if we could get as much as we possibly could to help offset the cost of this project. That would be outstanding. No, there's no guarantees, but we're still in the game. And then the other one is the next Wednesday at 2:00. Cheshire Medical, we're meeting, with finance about the money request I put in. That's that,
Did you specify an amount?
I did,
Is that EMS related?
yes, yeah. So I, I did this back in like May or April, May, and so they asked for a meeting so that we could talk about it, because there's a new CFO that Dan Gross isn't there anymore.
I think it conceptually begins to treat the hospital like any other community based on the allocation of resources and run stuff.
They're still getting a bargain with what we're asking.
Yeah,
in my
some of
opinion,
the,
But it's
I'll
there,
say, some of the pushback from a couple of towns has been, we have to pay a subscription fee and the hospital doesn't.
right,
They're using twice as many ambulances as we are,
correct,
which has some truth to it.
correct,
You know, the original kind of conceptual model that runs based on projected reimbursement rates would have been adequate, but it isn't turning out that way.
yeah.
And,
That's at 2:00 Wednesday.
Mhm.
For all.
Anybody that wants to come, yeah, so. Never hurts to have somebody on the board in the meeting.
well, if, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Particularly because, you know, you'll be hanging around.
You'll be hanging around,
The rest of us,
yeah, so,
if you can. Wouldn't hurt.
yeah. So that's what I have. I'm gonna move on to it's not there anymore. So, just the date, what is the date? So, is there any old business? Any new business? All right, consent agenda, vote to accept the weekly manifest and minutes of July 3rd, 2024. Second,
Aye.
yes, Commissioner Wozniak, yes, Commissioner England.
Aye.
And Commissioner Clark, yes, okay. All right, we've already had any calendar things that they need to know about. When are they gonna get the tickets?
The tickets only come 24 hours ahead of the
Yeah, I
flight.
see that, saw the information said they're gonna be distributed electronically.
Yes, so I'll have them for you, tomorrow. Oh, fun, tomorrow at 6 a.m.
Cause I couldn't pick a seat assignment yet.
No, you can't do anything until
Just,
tomorrow.
yeah. So, all right, so I think we're, so we're there.
What's your?
My plan,
That one,
yeah, well, I was just gonna drive over there.
be like 3 a.m.
Well, I like to get to the airport 2 hours before.
So you can
Just
sit in
because,
the car.
well, just because I've seen lines,
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I get it, I get it, I get it.
I mean, this last trip, to Miami.
What,
Or there, through Manchester.
No, we go through
Oh.
Manchester,
But you're saying Miami coming out.
in Miami,
Yeah.
I mean, had plenty of time, before the flight. But going through customs was like, I've never seen a line like that. It was like the whole city of Miami was,
Leave
I
the
mean-
country. As well, they could.
Mhm.
and it wasn't moving fast. So I ended up missing a seat. It was so long, so I had to do that.
I'm just gonna drive over and get up early and
Well, I thought you were gonna say,
I was, but then I got some things I wanna do, so.
like, what, sleep?
No, I just stuff with my wife, she has scheduled and so. I'll just get up early and go. Why, you think you wanna go over the night before? Get up,
I was thinking of it. Do a parking. Stay on the street or do drop in. I haven't actually decided yet. But,
This is for Friday morning.
for the NATO thing.
Friday or Tampa, to get into,
You're not going, because you have.
get into the cooler weather.
Mhm. Yeah, I called actually Dan's show. He had the guy from, the weather guy that he has on there. And I said, I'm heading out on Friday, to Tampa, and they're Friday, Saturday, Sunday, flying back on Monday. Tell me what the weather's gonna be like. And he said the weather, and like, And Dan's like, so pretty much what it is here, it's gonna be like down there. Yeah.
Well, I was concerned about Burrell.
Yeah, well,
It's passed.
that's all done. It wasn't fixed.
Well, I know, but if hopefully we'll get out of here before.
Well, that was what I'm going, the timing, there's still, obviously, it's not even a tropical storm, but it's supposed to bring
Rain,
up to 5 inches of rain to some parts of
yeah,
northern New England. We're in the yellow zone
yeah,
for some potential risk of flash flooding,
yeah,
just right over Manchester. So, but I don't know.
we'll see. Worst case scenario, so we get delayed.
Yeah.
Changing the subject, there was another topic which I raised last week for the county picnic, where one potluck supper for one.
Yeah, but you screwed it up, well, because you have family there.
I know, but it's fabulous family. So, so it's the 14th and the 21st, both the Wednesday nights. Jack responded saying both are okay for you. So the question to the three of you is Wednesday the 14th or is Wednesday the 21st better for you folks?
For those, I don't really know, so I should.
It's August, yes, either one is fine with me.
Yeah.
Wait, is,
Either one works at this point.
yeah, just about.
Yeah.
And finally, this evening at 5:30, we are hosting Colin Van Ostrom for a political event at our house
Yeah,
this afternoon. So,
I'm going to rent tonight.
okay,
No,
Dave, didn't you remind us last week, though, that the commissioner's barbecue is on the 21st, so that may be,
which is better for you, Cheryl?
well, you mentioned the 14th or the 21st, right, just now?
Yes,
Yeah, I don't know, does it really
Everybody
matter?
seemed to think both were fine, so perhaps the 14th is better just because of the commissioner.
Because everybody's having, yeah. Yeah, whatever, let's see if we can nail the 14th down, and then the 21st is the commissioners. 12 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock, we head over, we have the meeting at the, at County Hall. Then walk over and you guys, have lunch with them, break bread with the guys, be a little late in and one
okay,
employees.
okay, that's
It's 14,
that's the lunch,
yeah, is on the 21st,
okay,
and the 14th is what we would look for your house,
okay,
okay?
Yeah.
All right,
what time, like 6:30?
5:30.
5:30 till 1, or whatever.
and this,
whatever you take.
yeah. All right, so seeing no other business, is motion to adjourn? All right, yes,
Yes.
yes, and yes, okay.
Bye, everyone.